at the end of time.
O'clock.
Well, hey, everybody.
Yeah, and I am in a screen.
Hey, for a change.
Yeah.
That's good.
We don't next door.
Wouldn't want, like, the people in the video next door, like, pushing you
like,
out. That would be super funny if we got somebody in here that would, like, push you into the fucking into the video. We have to do that one of these days.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. So, yeah, I kind of like what you did with the lighting back there. He was messing around with the lighting.
I fixed it.
You fixed it.
Yeah.
I mean, we moved some stuff around, but... Because we used to have a blue and green one back there, but now it's over there. So, you know what I mean. But whatever. It doesn't really make that much difference.
There is a blue and green one there.
What, is there?
2 blue and green ones, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, there was one behind Spock, though.
There is one there.
Is there?
Oh, no. It's
on the floor. Yeah. There was one on the floor.
Okay, let me put it in its proper position then.
Well, no, I mean, I think there was another one.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That's right, because I moved that one
Yeah,
over
because you moved that. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what that was.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm not crazy.
That's what you're talking about.
Zach says, Jenny, why are the curtains over there made of trash bags? What?
What are you talking about?
The room look. They're not made of trash bags. They're made of curtains.
Yeah, it's curtains.
And they're red. Trash bags aren't red. So I don't really know. That's like a, what do they call that thing? A valance or whatever. The room looks bigger too. I wonder why. I think it's just because the angle is slightly different.
Yeah.
Either that or the room is expanding, like some kind of weird Lovecraftian.
That's actually further away than it looks.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
This is actually like a pretty big room.
It's a pretty big room, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you guys are only seeing like a little bit of it. It actually, like, there's another half of it, like, over there.
Spock is actual size. That's how far away that is. He is. He is. I stand next to him. He's fucking taller than me.
Pretty much. His head's a little small, though, I feel like.
Let me see.
Yeah, is it? Is your head the same size as Spock's head? Wait, I can't see you. You're out. You're in the next door video. Okay, there you go.
Hold on. Let me stand next to him.
Put your arm around him. Now give him a kiss.
So he's taller than me.
Yeah, I mean...
He's got some narrow-ass shoulders, though.
He does, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried to stand next to him, and I'm off camera. I can't see, though. There you go.
I know. John Gora said, I kind of dig the black trash bag aesthetic. I do too, actually.
What black trash bag?
I know. Everybody's like joking about the trash bag. Even though, like I said, they're like red with black. They look like black checkers from here, but they're actually like mesh.
It's red.
But they're red.
It's red and red
is what they are.
Yeah.
It's red on red. Zach says, by the way, show topic suggestion, the liminal spaces phenomenon. I was actually thinking about doing a show like that. I'm not really sure how I would approach the topic.
What the hell's that?
But liminal spaces are kind of like, if you watch Dead Mall videos, it's kind of anything that is sort of like an in-between space or like a abandoned space like that. And people get these particular feelings from them. There's this whole thing going on in horror where people doing something called back rooms, where there's all these like creepy videos and like ARGs and stuff like that of somebody like exploring these back rooms, like shit like behind the mall and stuff like that, where there's like nothing and they're just endless and like it just keeps going and stuff. So people are like really fascinated by that like nowadays. So.
I used to have dreams of being in endless houses.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I think that's maybe why people are so into it. I think that's why people are so into like Dead Mall videos and abandoned places videos and stuff like that, because of that whole liminal spaces kind of thing. Josie says, love those glasses, Jenny. Thank you very much. Yeah, I've had these for a little while.
I gave her those.
Yeah. He bought them for me. I was skeptical because I was like, well, I don't know if I really like these big ass glasses. I don't think they'd look good on my face, but they do actually, because I kind of like the smaller or cat eye ones. You know what I mean? Murder Hornets in my apartment is a back room. So it's just like empty and it never ends. You just keep going through the corridors and then every now and then there's a monster or something. But yeah. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about yet another depressing topic. But like I said, the true crime ones, as depressing as they are not gonna lie, my favorite ones to do. You know what I mean? And I knew about this case, but I didn't know all of the details about it. The weird thing about this is that even though in some circles, this girl, she's not a girl anymore, obviously, but she was a girl when she did it. She's kind of known as like the grandmother of school shootings, like the OG school shooter. I mean, technically there were a couple of school shootings prior to this, but when you're talking about your sort of like modern school shootings, which, you know, you see depressingly like a lot of nowadays, this was kind of the first one like that. And this happened in 1979 and very, very unusually was perpetrated by, as I said, a teenage girl. You hardly ever, I mean, women don't commit, serial killings and stuff like that to anywhere near the same frequency as men do, or boys and men do. And specifically, like, mass shootings of this kind is overwhelmingly like a male phenomenon. So it's very, very unusual for a girl to do something like this. And the reason that this got so famous at the time, even though I feel like it's probably not as famous nowadays, which I think is really strange, because this was kind of the first one, was that she was so fucking callous about it, like the way she talked about it. And even to this day, because spoiler alert, she's still in prison. She's still alive, but she never really came up with an adequate reason why she did it. And so over the years, I feel like a lot of people have kind of speculated like what exactly her deal was, or why she just decided to do this one day.
Probably just crazy.
But, well, I mean, not exactly. It's kind of like a lot more complicated than that, but we'll like get into it. There's a lot of weird shit going on with her and like her family dynamic, and it's, I don't know, it's just like a very, very strange fucking
school
story.
massacres. People act like this is new. It's not new. It goes all the way back to the 1800s. They've had kids show up, just the old schoolhouses in the 1800s, even out like in the in frontier areas, come shoot the teacher and a couple of students and themselves.
Yeah, I was listening to a documentary about this, and they mentioned a couple. There weren't a shit ton. There was actually one in the 1700s that I think like Native Americans did, and that was just, they didn't shoot kids or anything, but they just like went into school and like killed the schoolmaster, I think. And then there was one in the 1800s where they came in and kind of like opened fire at the playground or something like that. But it's like, I mean, they were pretty rare. And like I said, when you're talking about like modern ones, like you see nowadays, this was kind of the first one like that.
It's hard to have crimes like this in very low density population areas. It's just the statistics are against it.
Zach says, fun fact, the way I learned of this story was a girl who builds places associated with crimes and paranormal stuff in The Sims and tells the story about them. Oh yeah, I've heard of that channel. I didn't watch it because there are like quite a few YouTube videos about this, like not a lot that have a lot of traction, but there was kind of like a lot of smaller ones. And somebody, I didn't watch it, but like it was a guy that I guess goes and visits like areas of like where crimes happened. And so he did a video where he went to this house because evidently, I mean, as far as I'm aware, the house is still there. And the crazy thing about it is that, which we'll get into in a little bit, but her dad, he's dead now, but her dad lived in that same house like until he died, like the house that she shot from, which is weird. But yeah, so like I said, the whole situation with the family is weird. I don't really know what to believe, to be honest with you. But, and like I said, anything, you know, I'm just putting this out there like right away, is that anytime we talk about, because we talk about a lot of serial killers and all this kind of stuff. I mean, if you guys are around here, you know, and we always kind of talk about like reasons why they did it, or, you know, what maybe was the matter with them, or like, you know, fucked up shit that happened to them when they were kids, like maybe they were abused and stuff like that. And when we talk about that, it's like, I'm not in any way like trying to excuse what they did. It's like, I'm just trying to understand it or like contextualize it. And that's the same thing here. I kind of feel like the reason that I find Brenda Spencer so fascinating, not only because she's a teenage girl that did this horrible shit, you know, which is very unusual, but also that she can't really come up with a reason. Like, there didn't really seem to be a reason why she just particularly this one day did that. And the fact that she's been in prison all this time, and she was up for parole several times, but they haven't given it to her yet, so she's still in there. I don't imagine that they'll probably ever give it to her. She's in prison in California, and they said it's very unusual for anybody that is in there for murder to get parole. So they said, everyone's like, we would be very surprised if she ever got out. And it's because, too, even though she seems to now express remorse for what she did, she doesn't really seem to be taking responsibility for it, because every time she has a parole hearing, she tries to come up with some other reason or some other excuse, like why she did it, that seems calculated to make people sympathize with her more. And so the parole board have kind of got to a point where they're like, well, she's obviously not owning up to what she did, and so we think that she might still be a danger because she's not really seemed to be taking responsibility for what she did. She's always still trying to excuse it. So, but like I said, we'll get into that too. Murder Hornet said, is she still in jail? Yes, she is. Like I said, I think her last parole hearing, she had one in 2019. Or she was up for parole in 2019, and I think she personally waived it, said she didn't want it. And then at that point, they kept offering it to her subsequent years. So I think they did offer her one in 2022. But as far as I know, she did waive that one as well. So maybe at this point she doesn't want to get out. I'm not really sure. You have to think she's been in prison since she was 16 years old, in 1979.
Yeah, what's she going to do when she gets out?
I mean, and the thing about it is that, even though I just kind of feel like that, I saw a documentary where they interviewed a lot of the family members of the victims and stuff like that, and they're like, we just wish that she had got the death penalty. They don't want her to ever get out, because they're still afraid of her. I don't really think that, I don't know, it's hard to say. I've seen some more recent interviews with her, and she doesn't really seem dangerous per se, but it is troublesome, or it's troubling, the fact that she doesn't seem to be really taking responsibility for what she did.
That, what are we talking about? Are we saying that that they picked on her? Is that her excuse?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. She came up with some weirder shit than that.
Okay. Right.
This wasn't a case, this wasn't like Columbine or anything like that where the kids were like, oh, they got bullied and stuff. As far as I know, she wasn't a popular kid. She was kind of one of those wallflower type girls that was, real quiet and introverted and stuff. But as far as I know, she didn't get actively bullied. Not that I ever heard of anyway. But she seemed to have some other problems, but I'm not really entirely sure exactly how it all came together and culminated in that particular thing.
Remember
what I mean?
That Korean American kid? What was his name? Chol? I think one of his name was Chol. He was the one that dressed up. He thought everybody was fucking making fun of him, and he dressed up in his little tactical gear, went in and shot the place up. It was a university. Remember that guy?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and he made a whole video, and he sounded serious as hell. You've laughed at me for the last time. He's going on. He was almost like a Star Trek villain. He was like some out of Star Trek. And nobody even knew who that dude was. Nobody was making fun of him. It was all in his head.
See, I kind of feel like Elliot Rodger was like that, too, where, he thought... I mean, these people have, weirdly, they have really, really low self-esteem, but then, conversely, they also have, a really, really inflated sense of their own self-importance. Yeah. They think that everybody is conspiring against them or paying attention to them when really, no one knows who the fuck they are. It's they're just another person. Yeah. I mean, the level of narcissism that has to be present for you to actually think that anybody really gives that much of a shit about you, just random people that you've never met.
Yeah, that Korean dude was the whole world is looking at me.
See, that's mental illness. That's mental illness.
You've all mocked me for the last time.
Yeah, like I said, Elliot Rodger was like that too, and that blew my mind that he was actually saying it's he would actually girls that didn't even fucking know him, he was just some random dude. And he'd be like, well, they are actively, fucking with me because they're not coming up and, offering pussy to me. You know what I mean? It was like that. And I'm just like, the fuck are you thinking? What is the matter with you?
Yeah, that dude was obviously mentally ill.
Why would you think that anybody that doesn't know you, just a random person, would give a single fart about you. Like, nobody does. They don't.
We did Elliot Rodgers, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
Yeah, we did.
We haven't done that guy. We haven't done that other guy.
Yeah,
though.
Chol. Yeah, I think his name was
We haven't
Chol.
done that guy.
Sung Chol, Hyung Sung Chol, or something like that. Yeah, it's a Korean name. But, and then all the Korean Americans thought there was going to be reprisals, and they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know? It's like, and everybody shoots fucking schools up. We ain't crazy around here. They didn't fucking blame Korean Americans for that.
That's a terrible thing to say, but it does happen. I mean, statistically, it's rare still, but it does happen, like, way more than obviously it should.
What's that?
It shouldn't happen at all, like school shootings.
Yeah, yeah, I'm talking about reprisals.
Yeah.
The Koreans were all, should we all leave the country? You know?
I mean, I can't blame them for thinking that, because look what
happened.
happened to, like, people that even looked vaguely Arab after 9/11.
Yeah.
You know, they got fucking murdered in the street and shit like that. So, you know what I mean?
The past couple of days, they were killing Sikhs. Dude shot the Sikh.
Right. He's like, dude, I'm not even from that part of the world. What the fuck?
Yeah.
I'm not even the same religion.
Not even from the same country.
Sorry, I'm just brown. That's the only, like, fucking
not
Jesus
even a
Christ.
Muslim. Not even a
right.
Muslim.
That's
He's a
like,
Sikh.
that's what I mean. That happened a lot. I wrote about
Yeah.
some of those cases in Faceless Villain. There was like a whole run of them.
Yeah.
Like people just like randomly getting shot, like random hate crimes and stuff.
Yeah.
It was fucked up. John Gora said she's thoroughly institutionalized by now. I mean, she's got to be. Like I said, she's never had like a normal adult life outside of prison. She's been in jail since she's been 16. Yeah. Zach says, in my experience, wallflowers are either the coolest people ever or to be avoided at all costs, and you can never be sure which they are. Yeah, that's also true in my experience. A lot of like I said, you can't just be like, oh, they're loner weirdos, because some loner weirdos are actually really awesome people, but like you said, there's really no in between, is there? They're like really awesome loner weirdos, or they're kind of like potential serial killer loner weirdos.
Dahmer was a loner weirdo.
Right. And see, that's what I mean. So Brenda Spencer was a loner weirdo too, but obviously us other loner weirdos don't want to associate with those kind of loner weirdos, okay?
Yeah.
And like nobody does.
Dahmer and his bucket full
We're
of dicks.
cool, okay? Yeah. His bucket full of dicks.
His bucket full of dicks, yeah. Old bucket full of dicks, Dahmer.
Jeffrey bucket full of
Yeah,
dicks.
Jeffrey motherfucking bucket full
That's
of
what
dicks,
they
Dahmer.
should start calling him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeffrey bucket of dicks, Dahmer.
Mr. 88 said, actually, Zach asked, I Googled her once, doesn't she kind of look like Janis Joplin? She does a little bit. Mr. 88 said she was misanthropic grunge a decade before it was cool. Yeah, she was way ahead of her time. She was like a hipster. Her detachment was really weird. Yeah, that was one thing that really struck me about, and we'll get into this in a bit, but like while the shooting situation was still going on, some reporters actually got her on the phone. Like she was talking to them on the phone, and like some of the shit she said, she just like obviously did not. She just thought it was a fucking lark, man. She was having a great time.
She thought it was funny, huh?
Yeah, and it was just.
It's funny that women that it's a woman that killed this way, because it's atypical. Usually
That's what I mean. It's very, very unusual. You hardly ever see this.
Usually female multiple murderers, she's going to be a poisoner or an angel of death.
I mean, overwhelmingly, that's what you see. Or it's something like, Munchausen by proxy or something like that. Or usually, and we've talked about this before too, usually women killers, they tend to kill for quote-unquote practical reasons.
Which means
money.
Yeah.
Or they kill family members is usually what they do. Or like you said, they'll usually use poison or something. You don't usually see like violent killers. It happens. I'm not saying it doesn't. But mass shooters like this, like I don't even know what the percentage is. It's got to be vanishingly small.
Yeah. Or they're baby killers, like that old woman in London that used to fucking pretend like she was adopting kids out to fucking adoption services, but she's really just throwing them into the Thames.
And she was killing them.
Yeah. That was 18-something.
I mean, you have people like, Belle Gunnis or somebody like that. I mean, she was just killing people. She wasn't getting off on it, I don't think. She was just killing people and, like, cashing their fucking Social Security checks and shit like that. And just throwing them out in the fucking hog trough or whatever the fuck she was doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Kaylon Haken said, narcissism can be a byproduct of prolonged self-isolation. Yeah, that's true. The mind trying to defend itself from deep existential dread. That might have been Brenda Spencer's problem, too, because she did seem very isolated in a lot of ways. And like I said, we'll get into her family situation. I'm not entirely sure whether she was physically abused or not. She did make some claims in that regard much later, but I don't know how true they are. Like I said, I'm not in the habit of doubting people's allegations of sexual abuse, because that's like not a good, that's a slippery slope to go down. But the fact that she didn't bring it up until many, many years later, just kind of like gives me pause. You know what I'm saying? And she did it when she was like at a parole hearing, and like she hadn't brought it up prior.
Yeah,
to
based on what she said there, I'm listening to this audio book on YouTube called Rape of the Mind. It's real fascinating. It's written in the 1950s by, I think he's a Dutch author, Joost something or other, MD. And it's a book about mind control and brainwashing. And he talks about mental illness and catatonia. And that's like what she said. Some people are so sensitive to life's troubles that they decide to retreat from reality, sometimes using drugs, but sometimes just using their willpower. They retreat from reality and start living in a fantasy world. And they can train their brains eventually to live so deeply in fantasy that it starts coming across as schizophrenia, and it becomes schizophrenia. Schizophrenics are like that. And as it goes even deeper and deeper, it becomes catatonia. They don't even eat. You got to feed them. And they retreated into basically a nirvana, a self-controlled heaven. And you can put two catatonic people right next to each other, and they won't ever talk or no interactions really. Maybe something real small. But then if they talk, the interaction is not deep. It's real superficial, sometimes totally unrelated. One guy talking about a cigarette, and the other guy talking about cars. You know what I mean? But it's fascinating. It's in the mind folding in on itself like that, which is partially what happens. It's part of the process that causes brainwashing and mind control to work. I'm still listening to it. It's a good book, real good. And about how totalitarian regimes can do it in mass on people, entire populations. The Soviet Union, and he was talking about, Nazi Germany is what he was talking about, how they were using mind control. And they know they're doing it. It's psychiatrists or psychologists using it, propaganda techniques to do it. Fascinating books. It's for free on YouTube. I encourage people to listen to it.
Murder Hornet said she had a typical 70s look. Yeah, she did look a little bit... She looked kind of like a tomboy. And she was a self-admitted tomboy. Like, she was into kind of boyish stuff and liked to wear, like, kind of military fatigues and things like that. Zach says, oh God, I just found a 90s prison photo of her. And I know what photo you're talking about. And she has a lesbian buzz cut mixed with a mullet. I don't think I've ever seen a woman with a mullet before.
Yeah.
Oh, I have.
Oh yeah, you come to the south.
But yeah, you'll see a lot of them.
They had them up north too.
And that's an old photo. Like, I've seen a more recent photo of her. I think the most recent one I saw was from 2021, and she's like unrecognizable. Like, she's in her 50s now, I guess, but she porked out like big time. Yeah. Because when she was 16, she was a tiny. She was very, very thin. And she's real short. She's only my height. She's like 5'2".
John Goris points out, Americans has done it too. They're doing it now, doing it through corporate propaganda channels to television. You can plainly see that they're using those same techniques. News, all CIA. Okay, good.
Murder Hornet said, didn't y'all do a show on that thallium poisoner in the UK? Yeah, we did. We've done a show on like several different poisoners because I'm fascinated by poisoners. They're probably my favorite kind of serial killer. I know that's a fucked up thing to say. I don't know. Like, I'm really like fascinated by people that poison. And we did a show about, what was that dude's name? He was actually, for a time, was one of the Jack the Ripper suspects. I mean, who wasn't a Jack the Ripper suspect during that time? I was probably a Jack the Ripper suspect, and I wasn't even born yet. But yeah, he was like Thomas Neil Cream, right? Was he the one that was the poisoner? I think we did a show about him, but that was like a long time ago. Let me see. There was something else that I wanted to fucking... Zach says, back in the 70s, she was actually really pretty, too. Is that weird to say? Yeah, I mean, I thought she was an okay-looking girl. I mean, she didn't... On the, I don't know if this was on the Wikipedia page or on Murderpedia or somewhere like that, there was a quote that one of her classmates said that she was, quote-unquote, really crummy looking. But I don't know if that meant like what she actually looked like or just that she dressed kind of.
Yeah, maybe didn't take a
shower. Well, I mean, she looked clean, but she just always wore like kind of baggy.
Oh, okay.
You know, she just dressed real baggy, and she had like always had a beanie on, and
yeah, he means sloppy.
Yeah, I thought that's maybe what.
Yeah.
Because I was like, well, she looks okay to me. Like she doesn't look. She's not super ugly or anything.
She was
that.
grunge before grunge.
Yeah, she looked basically like a '90s grunge kid, like a little skinny girl with a little beanie and like baggy fatigues on.
Mm-hmm. I saw pictures of her. She was cute.
Yeah.
Well,
Murder Hornet said, I didn't know she was a ginger. Always seen black and white photos. Yeah, she had like actually, that's about the same color. That's my natural hair color.
Yeah.
Too. No relation. Yeah. But yeah, she is about the same hair color as me. But yeah. So, okay, so should we talk about the shooting first and then go back and talk about her, or should we talk about her first? Do you think? What is like the best?
Let's talk about the shooting because that's probably more exciting. And then we go back. We double back. The male strategy would be talk about the shooting first, and then you go back and talk.
Well, see, that's why I'm asking you because I figured you'd be like, well, let's do it the Doodley way.
The Doodley way.
The Doodley way.
To answer John, the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, I think his name was.
Mm-hmm.
He was MK Ultra.
Yeah, we did a show about him.
We did a show about him
not too long ago.
Yeah, he was involved in the MK Ultra experiments when he was in the university. You read his stuff, man. He's right about a lot of stuff. His methods were wrong. Had he just waited, he'd have his own YouTube channel. He'd be fucking famous, be on InfoWars or some shit. But a lot of things he was worried about. His ultimate fear was that eventually corporations would basically make artificial people using genomes and artificial wombs and stuff and sell human beings as products. That it would eventually get to that. China would do that. I don't know. I think it would be too illegal in the United States right now to do that. But he's talking about replicants, basically. Replicants like from fucking Blade Runner. And AI taking over and shit. Which, okay. That's really what he was worried about. Among a bunch of other stuff.
Zach said, also, is this where the I Hate Mondays quote comes from? I don't know. I think that was a thing before that. But if you know the Boomtown Rats song, which is called I Don't Like Mondays, it's a great song, by the way. And it came out in 1979. Actually, 1979 or 1980, like not long after this happened, was inspired by this. It was about Brenda Spencer. So, and the thing about it is that I heard that after that song came out, I don't think it got in the charts in the U.S., but it got a lot of radio play over here, like in bigger cities, like bigger markets. But it was like a #1 hit in like the UK and like a bunch of other countries in Europe and stuff. And I think either Brenda Spencer, I don't remember if she wrote to Bob Geldof personally or if she just said this in her interview. But she said that she was so happy that Bob Geldof had written I Don't Like Mondays about her because it made her famous. And then Bob Geldof was like, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't have written that fucking song. You know what I mean? Because that's probably their most famous song, I feel like. It wasn't the first one I heard of theirs. Actually, the first one I heard of theirs was Up All Night, which is also a good song. But yeah, I Don't Like Mondays is about her.
And in my opinion, I think it's hard for Bob Geldof to make anybody famous because he's not that famous.
Well, he wasn't famous here, but he was hugely famous in Europe. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's what I mean. And that song, I Don't Like Mondays, I think the U.S. was pretty much the only country where that wasn't like a huge hit, and it did get radio. I mean, it was like #1 in like 40 countries or some shit like that. Like, so it was a massive. See, that's what I mean. Like, that's it. Well, yeah. Well, I kind of feel like Americans like think like, oh, everything like, oh, well, we don't know who it is, so they're not famous. But I'm like, there's like many other countries where shit's famous, but like the Boomtown Rats were like hugely famous in the UK. I knew some of their songs because they played them on MTV like back in the old days, but I didn't hear that one until like a little bit later. But they used to play Up All Night all the time, like back in the early 80s. So, but they played I Don't Like Mondays on a lot of radio stations. And matter of fact, they played it so much that the families of the victims were kind of like, can we not? Like, we really don't want to hear the song and like be reminded of like fucking our loved ones dying every time we hear this fucking song. But you know what I mean? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Yeah, Camp Guy knows this song. Talking about the silicone chip inside her head. Which, she didn't have that, but, because they're talking about her being a Manchurian candidate. However, they did find out later that, we'll get into that she maybe did have some, I don't want to say brain damage. That seems a little excessive, but, you know. So here's what happened. So it's the morning of January 29th, 1979. And in case I did not mention it, this happened in San Diego. Now, Brenda Spencer actually lived in a house across the street from Cleveland Elementary School, named after Grover Cleveland, who was a president, if you're not from the United States.
Yeah, and Grover was a Muppet.
And Grover was a Muppet.
Yeah.
Those
Cleveland
two things are
was
completely unrelated. Grover is probably my favorite Muppet. Although, I don't know, maybe Oscar's up there, too.
Snuffleupagus.
Yeah, Snuffleupagus.
Yeah. Oh, bird.
Do you remember, like, when Sesame Street first started, am I tripping? But for a long time, everybody else on Sesame Street thought that Big Bird was high because, like, he was the only one that could see Snuffleupagus, or Snuffleupagus would only show himself to Big Bird, so everyone thought he was making it up. It was, like, his imaginary friend.
Yeah.
And then finally, later on, they're like, oh, my God, he is real.
Yeah.
Am I crazy, or did that really happen?
I think that did happen, but I don't think it happened for very long.
Okay.
A couple of episodes.
Because I was pretty sure, I was
I
pretty
think so.
little, like, when I saw that. But
it sounds vaguely familiar.
I'm pretty sure that, like, for a long time, they thought he was, like, fucking hallucinating or something.
I forgot the plots to fucking the Sesame Street series. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't plots per se,
no, sure
but they just kind of they just, like, hung out, you know what I mean? Like, they had their little characters and they just hung out.
The count would come out and start go, one little bat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two little bats. Fuck this shit, man. Come on, let's get it.
Well, because you brought up Snuffleupagus.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that the other day because somebody at work was talking about Sesame Street, and I was like, I thought it was like, yeah, they thought he was, like, pretending that Snuffleupagus wasn't real because nobody ever saw him. Let's see. Mr. 88 said, even the Beatles, they were hugely famous in England in early 63, but had zero traction in the U.S. Then they finally caught on. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was hugely famous in the UK. Yeah, Jeffy Art, thank you. Jeffy Art says, people believed he was an imaginary friend. Yeah, that's right, that's what I thought. Maria was the first human to meet him. Yes, I'm that guy.
Oh,
That's I remember Maria. Yeah. Maria, and who was the other? Luis was the guy, and then I remember Mr. Hooper because he died on there, and that was like a big thing. Zach says the only reference I've seen to that was a Family Guy joke where Big Bird was a meth addict and covered in sores and itchy. Man, I used to love Sesame Street. It's still good. I would still like let kids watch it nowadays. Yeah. That's really funny.
Making me think of all this old shit, man.
Well, you're the one that brought up Grover, so that's why, because we were talking about Grover Cleveland. Grover was not president of the United States, although how fucking awesome would that be?
Yeah.
I would love Grover to be president.
Yeah.
That would be so cool.
I was thinking of Sigmund and the Sea Monster when all that shit was.
Oh, yeah. I remember that show, too.
Yeah.
I remember that show, too.
Was it Rip Taylor?
Was he on there, too?
Oh, yeah. Throwing glitter and everything.
Man, that bitch was on everything.
He was
in
Queen of the Sea.
70s. He was. He was on all the shows.
The Sea Hag Queen or whatever. Show up with his fucking magic wand and shit, throwing glitter.
Yeah.
Starfish and shit. Gay as fuck.
He was, yeah.
You couldn't get any gayer than that, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the aspirational. He's like the aspirational gay.
Yeah.
Like
he was like a meme.
That's like peak gay, right?
That was like 70s meme. Yeah, level gay. He was an old queen.
Yeah.
And knew it. Just took the shit to the fucking hilt. Funny, though.
Yeah.
Fuck, was funny, man.
He was
Hilarious.
very funny.
Hilarious comedian.
Jeffy Art said, oh, and he reminded me of this. Luis and Maria were married in real life. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Luis passed away recently. That's right. I remember that. I think that's what got me thinking about it, maybe. But yeah. So yeah. So this is January 29th, 1979. Kind of a cold morning in San Diego. So Brenda, she decides that she's going to, apparently, like, her dad goes in. She lived with her dad, which we'll get into, like, the whole family dynamic, like, after we talk about the shooting. Because Tom said we had to talk about the shooting first, because that's the Doodly way.
Well, yeah, because I don't know anything about the details of the shooting. I don't know, so I imagine, I'm just going to say probably the average person probably doesn't either. So let's go into the shooting first.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like this isn't as well known as, like, more recent school shootings, even though this was kind of, like, sort of the OG, like, school shooting, I guess, if you want to put it like that. But, yeah, so her dad goes in to wake her up, and she's already up and dressed and stuff, but then she's just kind of like, you know what, I don't feel that good. I don't really want to go to school today. And he's like, okay, whatever. He was just going to work. And he was kind of used to her not wanting to go to school. I mean, we'll get into it later, but
what grade is she?
She was 16, so I guess she was probably a junior.
Probably like a junior.
I imagine she was probably a junior.
Yeah.
And she didn't go to the school that she was shooting at because that was an elementary school. Mm-hmm. She went to Patrick Henry High School. But the elementary school was across the street.
So she
from
didn't shoot up.
It's literally
school.
like right
she
across.
She shot somebody else's school up.
Yeah, she had lived across the street from that school
okay.
like pretty much her whole life. But it was an elementary school that she shot at, not a high school.
Okay.
But yeah, she was truant a lot because she started getting in trouble and shit like that. So her dad was just kind of like, whatever, like, you don't have to go to school. I think that she claimed she had PMS. Now, I don't really know. I was listening to there's a really good podcast. It was Once Upon a Crime, and she did like an hour-long breakdown of this case, and I was listening to it in the car on the way home, and she was saying that Brenda had like really, really bad like PMS, like debilitating, which, you know, she wasn't saying that as like an excuse for anything, but she was saying that was one of many like kind of health problems that she had. And so that was the reason why her dad didn't really think anything of, you know, her saying, oh, I have really bad PMS. And he's just like, okay, just whatever, just stay home. So I guess she was kind of like planning on doing this. So like I said, it's a Monday morning. So she essentially, the school, I guess what they did, like the classes started at either 8 or 8:30, I can't remember, but they would have the gate closed and like the little kids would line up, and then the principal, whose name was Burton Ragg, he would come and open the gate and like let all the kids inside, like to go to their classes. So that's basically what was happening. Like all the kids were lining up outside. So at this point, Brenda decides she gets the .22 that her dad had given her for Christmas, you know, which had only been like a month before.
It's a pistol or a rifle?
It's a rifle.
Okay.
And now I've heard that she shot from her bedroom window or that she busted out the glass in the front door and shot for the front door. It doesn't really matter. But she essentially just set up kind of like a little command post there and just started shooting.
Set up a little sniper position.
Started shooting at the elementary school from her house. And just spraying bullets everywhere. Now, the thing about Brenda Spencer was that she'd been hunting and target shooting and stuff with her dad since she was a little kid. And her dad's friend said she was like a crack shot. Said she was like an expert marksman, better than him, he said.
Girls are good. Girls are real good when you teach them.
So she was like a really good shot, which is unfortunate in this situation. But she just started shooting. Now, obviously, this was not a thing that happened all the time, so nobody really knew what was going on at first. Everyone just kind of heard noises. They thought it was firecrackers. Like somebody saw one little girl fall down, but they didn't really think anything about it. There was that kind of thing. Yeah,
for any of you people who didn't grow up around guns, maybe you're in other countries, 22 long rifles, what they're talking about, it's a very entry level sporting trainer type caliber. It's a glorified BB gun. It'll kill you, but really there are pellet rifles that have ballistics similar to that. A very small bullet, not moving very fast. Out of an 16-inch barrel or longer, it can get pretty fast in terms of velocity. And if it hits you in the right spot, it'll kill you. It'll kill you deader than shit. A lot of people were killed with them over the years in the United States because there were so many of them out there. Not particularly deadly, but everything's about shot placement. So just letting you know. And here, what they're talking about, the firecracker thing, out of a rifle length barrel, they're not very loud. They produce less decibels than your average suppressed or silenced pistol. A lot of people think silencers make weapons silent. They don't. It just suppresses it. It'll make a subsonic 9mm pistol sound a little bit louder than a 22 long rifle that isn't suppressed. Just makes everything a lot tamer. You don't need air protection. So yeah, from a distance, you'd have a hard time knowing whether that you were being shot at. You'd see something happen to somebody in front of you, what the hell fucking happened? If you didn't know exactly what you were looking at, you may not realize that person had been shot.
Well, yeah, no one really made the association.
Yeah.
Like, they were just hearing noises. They couldn't tell where they were coming from.
From a distance, they sound fake, cheap.
Yeah, they couldn't tell where they were coming from. And like I said, they just saw a little girl fall, and they just thought, oh, she fell over. They didn't really... It was so... Like, people were so clueless that, you know, people were still... Like, parents were still pulling up to school, like, dropping the kids off. Like, nobody knew what was going on. You know, and there was even one thing where I think one of the bullets hit the fire alarm and made the fire alarm start going off.
Yeah.
So some of the kids that were already inside, like the teacher's like, oh, fire drill, and took the kids back outside, not knowing that there was like fucking, that they were like in the firing range.
Yeah, so I can see how...
So it was complete chaos.
Yeah. Special operations uses suppressed weaponry a lot because it does confuse the targets. They're not really sure exactly what's happened. It takes them a while to realize that they're being shot at. I mean, it's not like a high-powered rifle. High-powered rifle, piece of a person is vaporized right in front of you, and then you hear boom, the shot, because the bullet arrives before the fucking sound of the discharge gets there, because it's ultrasonic. And but it's like a damn thunderbolt. You know that you've been shot at. But now the 22, it would take you a little while. It's not that violent, and the fucking the sounds of the shot sound cheap, like cheap firecrackers. They don't sound serious.
That's what everybody that was there that they interviewed for that said that. Like I said, and it's not like you're expecting shit like this, especially back in 1979. Maybe people would be expecting it nowadays, but like back then, this had really never happened like this before, so nobody was ready for this, or they're just kind of like, no, so nobody knew what was going on. It was just like complete, because there was kids all in the front of the school, because it was, you know, it was the start of the school day, and everybody's getting dropped off and getting off of buses and shit like that. So
22 long rifles. If you have not long enough barrel, it's burned up so much of the powder that by the time the bullet leaves the barrel, there's not a lot of expanding gases left. Now, there will be some, and there are ways to suppress that very easily. I'm not going to tell you how, but there's very easy ways. With fucking shit you can find inside your house to collect that burning gas, and had she had that on the end, the sound would be, if it's a bolt-action rifle, the sound would be as quiet as a pellet rifle. In other words, impact of the bullet would be louder than the discharge of the bullet. So the person screaming after they've been hit would be the loudest thing. Yeah. If you know what you're doing, you could do a lot of damage. But,
well, she did.
Yeah.
So like I said, she's just shooting. She wasn't shooting randomly. She did seem to be aiming and hitting what she aimed at. She did hit several children. One in the abdomen, one in the side, one in the shoulder, one in the wrist. Like the bullet went all the way through the little girl's wrist. So 8 children ended up being shot. Thankfully, none of the children died of their injuries, but 8 of them were shot. However, 3 adults were hit, and 2 of them did die. 2 of them at the scene. What ended up happening was that she's shooting at the kids, and the principal, Burton Ragg, who was there, who had just opened the gate, like to let the kids in, he kind of realized what was happening. And he, quite heroically, was like trying to pull kids out of the way, like to get them to safety. He's like, duck somebody's shooting. And he figured it out. And at that point, Brenda shot him directly in the heart, like right in the chest.
Yeah,
and he just fell. And he was, as far as I know, he was killed instantly.
Yeah. Hearts don't work when they have a little hole in them.
Yeah.
Usually, wound ballistics on a .22 long rifle kind of look like an ice pick wound. It's just clean in, clean out. But if it hits anything that's real vital, like an artery, a heart, something deep in the central nervous system, it'll kill you.
Well, yeah, because somebody that I was watching an interview with somebody that was there that day, like another somebody that worked at the school, and they said they saw the principal get hit, and they just like all of a sudden his chest just like a thing of blood, and he just like fell.
Yeah, well, it's under pressure. It's pumping.
Right.
So it just pumps blood out the
yeah.
bone.
So like I said, as far as I know, he was killed instantly.
Yeah.
The other person that died was the custodian. His name was Mike Sukar. Now, from what I've heard of him, he was actually a Korean War veteran. So he kind of figured out what was going on too. And he also like ran in there trying to save the kids, like trying to get them out of the way. And he was also trying to go and see if the principal, Burton Rad, because he saw him fall. So he ran over there to make sure he was all right. Like he was going to help him out. And while he was doing that, he also got shot. And as far as I know, he was killed at the scene also. Now, the third adult that got hit was actually not until a little bit later. That was like one of the cops that showed up. He got shot too, but he actually survived, which we'll get into in a little bit. Because what ended up happening is that you have to, like, this shooting went on for about half an hour. She was shooting at the school.
Yeah, they weren't sure where it was coming from.
Yeah, they didn't know where it was coming from at first. So, you know, and by the time they figured out what was going on, and they were just kind of like, holy shit, like, you know, the principal, they saw him fight, and they see his legs, like, sticking out of the bush, and, like, he's all, like, you know, covered with blood and everything.
She thought she was going to get away with it.
I don't know about that, though.
You don't think so?
But, no. I don't think she did. But yeah, so by the time they kind of figured it out, and then they were just starting, like, you know, wrangling the kids up and, like, trying to get them into the auditorium and, like, trying to get the ambulance in there so you could get the wounded ones out. And, like, they, you know, she was still shooting at them at this point, and so they didn't really, and like I said, at first they didn't really know where it was coming from.
So it was just a target of opportunity. It was a place she could shoot. It was a place she could hit from her house.
Yeah, and I mean... we'll get into that in a little bit. Well, like I said, this is why I didn't necessarily want to cover the shooting first, because there's like a lot of details, but I'll have to go back and like backtrack and like talk about that.
All right.
But so what ends up happening is that while the shooting is going on, like while it's active, the editors at, I believe it was the San Diego Union Tribune, I think is the name of the newspaper there, and he was basically like telling his reporters, why don't you, like, just randomly call people on that street and see if you can get a scoop, like, see what the fuck is going on down there, you know what I mean? And see if you can get a story. So they start calling phone numbers on the street, like where the school is. They start calling numbers of the house. And it so happened that one of the reporters called Brenda's house. And she answered the phone. And the reporter... And he said she sounded completely normal. Like, it was just like a complete, like, hello? Like, what, you know? And he's like, hey, you know, can you see the shooting from your house, or do you see, like, what's going on? And she's like, yeah, I can see the whole thing. And then he said she started, like, giggling.
Right.
And then he's like, well, you know, what's going on with that and everything? Or do you know where the shots are coming from or something like that? And she's like, yeah, I know all about it. It's like, and then she said something like, yeah, it's me that's doing it. And then she hung up.
Yeah.
I mean, and like I said, I was listening to Once Upon a Crime, and she said, the girl said, like, all kind of crazy, because the reporters kept calling her back, being like, what the fuck? And, like, they kept calling her back, and she just kept saying shit like, they asked her, was like, well, why are you doing this? Like, what are your reasons for doing this? And very famously, she said, oh, I don't like Mondays. This livens up the day, she said. Yeah. That was, like, her very famous quote. Yeah. And then she's saying stuff like, it's like, well, nobody likes Mondays. Do you? You know what I mean? Like, this is going to be, like, that's the reason she did it. And then she was talking about that she just didn't have a reason, that she was just doing it for fun. That she just wanted to... she also said something about, like, she wanted to shoot cops. That too. So she was basically just doing it for shits and giggles, and they said that it was really creepy because she sounded just, like, completely cool and collected, and, like, she just did not give a single fuck. And this was while the thing was going on. Like, they were talking to her on the phone, and she's just like, yeah, I don't like Mondays. Like that. Yeah. Like, she was just totally fucking callous about it.
She's crazy.
So, obviously, the reporters are like, well, holy shit. And so, like, they call the cops, because, like I said, I think at this point, like, some cops had got there. Like, the other adult that got injured was one of the cops that showed up, because he kind of showed up and was kind of trying to, you know, get it, like, corral everybody, and he got shot in the neck. I think what ended up happening was that the bullet hit his bulletproof vest, but it ricocheted and went into his neck. Yeah. But he lived. Like, he didn't die. But yeah, so he got
Might have been
wounded
sounds
as well.
almost kind of like a suicide type situation, but it was like a failed suicide. She's going to kill everybody and take everybody with her. She's going to kill herself and take everybody with her type of deal, but it didn't turn out. But well, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out why somebody would do this.
Well, yeah, I still don't know.
With this cavalier attitude, makes you think she didn't expect to survive it. She's trolling him on the phone over it and trying to take credit. That's what it sounds like. I'm thinking that it's kind of like, I think she expects to kill herself, but maybe she chickened out.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, at one of, like, much later, at one of her parole hearings, because like I said, she's had several parole hearings. She's still in there. They're not letting her out. But at one of her parole hearings, she comes up with, like, different shit, like, every time. And I think at one of the parole hearings, she did say something to the effect of, I was just hoping that the cops would turn up and kill me.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is that I don't really know if you can trust anything she says, because every time she has a parole hearing, she comes up with a different story.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It may not be on purpose. It may be that she's just real incoherent.
Yeah, I did
real
kind of get that
Yeah.
impression. I mean, the thing about it, she doesn't seem like a dumb person, and actually everything, like, everybody that knew her, like her family and teachers and, you know, the few friends that she had prior to this incident, all said that, you know, she wasn't a great student, but she was actually, like, quite intelligent, and she was, like, quite creative and things like that. But but I don't think she had much insight into what made her do this.
She's young, dumb, probably fucked up hormones, like we mentioned that, and some kind of glitchy personality, and got depressed, wanted to kill herself, but just couldn't go through with it, so she killed other people. She's probably hoping that they would come kill her, but they didn't. It was something like that, and she can't admit it to herself. Something like that. Well,
Yeah.
I might be able to glean more out of it.
Yeah, I mean, once we get more
you start
into
getting
her
into
and,
it,
like,
right, yeah.
once we get more into her background and stuff like that. So, so like I said, the shooting itself went on for about 30 minutes. And like I said, 2 deaths and 8 wounded. And the 2 deaths were adults. It was the principal and the custodian, like, of the school. After that, like, apparently when she was talking to the reporters on the phone, she basically said something like, well, I gotta go, like, I still have more fun to have, like, I want to go shoot some more people, maybe I can get another cop or something like that, because she had actually hit one of the cops, but she didn't kill him. So, you know, allegedly she said that, like, over the phone, and then she hung up. But after that happened, she actually didn't shoot anymore. However, she did barricade herself in her house for about 6 hours and would not come out. The reason how they got her to stop shooting was they actually, like, the cops and stuff, when they showed up, they actually commandeered a garbage truck and pulled it in front of the school, so she couldn't shoot at the front of the school anymore. And after she didn't have that, you know, soft target, like the easy target, she kind of just stopped shooting and just holed up in her house. And she basically said, because they had, like, you know, negotiators there, like, talking to her and trying to get her to come out and, like, trying to get her to surrender and stuff. And she was basically saying, well, if she comes out, she's going to come out shooting. And she was saying all that kind of stuff. I think that she was living out, I got the impression that she was kind of living out, like, her badass, like, Bonnie and Clyde fantasy, it seemed like. Because I feel like she was the kind of person, and I'll get into this in a little bit too, but she seemed like the kind of person that she wanted very much to be seen like a badass. You know what I mean? And she kind of had all these fantasies about, you know, killing cops and being famous and all this other kind of shit. So I think maybe, so some of the stuff she says, like I said, you can't really believe it because she might have been, like, really self-aggrandizing.
Yeah, well, just some 16-year-old girl fantasizing about that bitch crazy.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's not, I mean,
Yeah.
just for the record, that's not something that normal 16-year-old girls really fantasize about. I didn't know anybody that
That bitch crazy.
thought anything like that. I mean, I get...
I mean, actually, let me put some ice in that.
Yeah, all my ice melted.
Yeah, the more normal 16-year-old girl badass fantasies that she's going to be a porn star or a stripper.
Well, I don't know about, I never thought that.
No, but some of them do.
Well, some of them do, but
Tracy Lords.
Well, I know
I'm
that.
gonna be a stripper. And then
I know that,
I'm gonna be a
but
porn star. And then she's like, that's what she did.
I think that's unusual too, like,
Yeah,
for
it's unusual,
16-year-olds. I think
there's
that's.
more of those.
I think you're just projecting. Well, yeah, there's more of those than there are like people that fantasize about gunning people down. For Christ's sake, like I said, it's not very common for girls. I don't know. Most girls just don't think that way. Like it doesn't occur to them. You know what I mean? So I mean, unless they're really, really bullied or picked on or something like that, then they might have like fantasies about like revenge and stuff, but. It's very, very unusual. Like this kind of stuff is very unusual. I think that's why I find this case so fascinating, especially because, like I said, nobody really has any idea. She doesn't have any idea why she did it. And you know, like I think Murder Hornet was saying, somebody said earlier that it's like sometimes there isn't a reason, and obviously she doesn't know what the reason is. So I mean, and all these years she's had to think about it. I don't think that she has any further insight into that. So yeah. So she's in there for about 6-7 hours, something like that. She's like holed up in the house. They're trying to get her to come out. Like I said, she keeps threatening. She's gonna like, you know, you get close to the house, you know, I'm gonna shoot you too. Like I've shot all these people, blah, blah, blah. So they were kind of holding off for a while. But then finally they were able to coax her into surrendering because they were like, well, you know, what can we do for you? Or can we bring you something? All she wanted was a Whopper from Burger King. And I was like, man, that's all you want? Like, you could have got something a lot better than that, I would think. But, you know what I mean? I mean, admittedly, Burger King Whoppers were probably a lot better in 1979 than they are now, maybe, but...
Yeah, Whoppers were good. Whoppers were good, so was fucking Jumbo Jacks. You guys remember how good a Jumbo Jack used to be.
But that's kind of how they... So, basically, she said, yeah, she wanted a Whopper from Burger King. And they're like, okay, well, tell you what, we'll give you a Whopper from Burger King if you surrender and if you come out the damn house and bring all the guns and bring all the ammo, bring everything out here and surrender peacefully, and you can have a fucking Whopper. I don't know if they ever got her a Whopper now that I'm thinking about it. I guess I imagine.
Yeah, John, Terminator fantasies are more of a boy thing. Yeah.
That's what I mean. I think it's a lot more common, which this is alarming too, but it's a lot more common for boys. It's like I said, girls, and you know, I don't want to say like across the board because like I'm sure some girls have fantasies like violent fantasies and stuff, but I'm just saying that being a girl myself and associating with a lot of girls when I was growing up, it's just not something that ever came up or that really. It's just you don't really think that way. It's just not really something that occurs to you.
Based on my studies, if girl has any social fantasies, it's about being naughty. It's not about being a Terminator.
Yeah, that really never...
No, they're not being Terminator. Just, okay, like I told you, the Tracy Lords, all right? What's her name? Angela White, who's a big porn star. She said that she wanted to be a porn star since she was like 16, 17. That she thought that was badass. That's an antisocial fantasy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's female. It's not, I'm going to be the Terminator and fucking shoot up the police station. That's just...
Yeah, like
that's
I said,
that's a boy fantasy.
That literally never occurred to me.
That doesn't occur to little girls. Yeah.
I'm not really sure what I think my fantasy when I was growing up was I wanted to be like Stephen King.
Yeah.
I wanted to be like a famous horror writer. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
Which isn't necessarily badass, but I didn't really fantasize about being a badass. That really wasn't something that occurred to me or was important to me in any way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was more like I wanna write horror and be as rich as Stephen King. That was more what I was like shooting for.
It's unusual for even antisocial girls to have violent.
It is.
endeavors.
Like I said, it's just not
It's
usually something that you think of.
No,
it's just not. It's hard to explain. Maybe to a dude because I guess dudes like have more violent fantasies than women do. But
the testosterone and shit, and they're just rough and tumble play and
but
shit.
You just don't think about it.
Yeah, girls don't think about that. They might fantasize about having a fucking criminal boyfriend or something who's nice to them. But I don't. Think
and I don't even think that's necessarily anything to do with their criminal behavior per se.
No.
It's just that he's such a bad person.
All these little people, but
he's nice to me.
Yeah.
Like I'm special.
Yeah.
So it's more like an I'm special fantasy than it is like I'm
else.
dating a criminal fantasy.
Right, yeah.
Because when the rubber hits the road, you don't really want to be dating a criminal.
Yeah.
It's like that never ends well. No. But I'm just saying that usually that's a Beauty and the Beast. Fantasy is what that is.
Like the serial killer groupies.
Yeah.
Same shit.
It's not, like I said, if they were actually there and like saw a serial killer like, cutting off someone like Ted Bundy, like cutting off someone's head and like using it for a sex toy, I think their ardor would cool pretty quickly if they were actually there and witnessed that actually happening in front of them. Yeah. Like, I don't think they would think it was so cool. I would hope not, unless they were fucking psychotic too.
Yeah, well, actually, we're getting off topic, way off topic. But somebody was psychoanalyzing the damn, the serial killer groupies, and they said, no, them bitches are crazy too. They're crazy.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Yeah, that there's some kind of a crazy glitch in a certain type of women that they have to be with some dude who's a fucking killer, and the weirder he is, the more they like him. And that woman that married Ted Bundy and was in the fucking courtroom with him, she just happened to have that glitch.
She's a whack job.
And she fucking fell for that dude, and she knew he was a necrophile and killed little girls and shit like that. And that was just even more enticing.
Because that is just not normal. I mean, look, I'm a horror nerd. I love horror shit. I love talking about serial killers and stuff. I don't want to hang out with serial killers. I don't want to date a serial killer. Fuck that.
A lot of those serial killers have orbital girlfriends that help them select victims and are there to.
That's fucking
watching
crazy.
Them kill the women. They're just.
This bitch is just crazy.
They're just as crazy as him. It's just a different kind of crazy. It's a different error. But they find each other somehow through, I guess, natural selection. Because if she wasn't like that, he'd have killed her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So she's alive because she was like that.
Yeah. Yeah, camp guy saying, everybody look at me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, I'm like the opposite. I'm just, when I was a kid, I was like, everybody please don't look at me. Yeah. Maybe that's why I didn't have any of that kind of stuff.
Well, the naughty girl fantasies, is look at me.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. Look at me.
See, I don't really like being looked at necessarily in that way, so it's just kind of like, and I especially didn't back then.
Yeah.
So that's probably why I didn't have any fantasies in that regard. Thank you very much, John Robertson, who gave us a super chat. And also, I have to mention now that you are here, I would like to thank you again, John Robertson, because you are our newest patron.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's right. Became a patron. I think I mentioned it on the last show, when you actually said that, but I like to mention it on the main show too. So, so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. But yeah, he says, hey guys, wanted to contribute to the flashbulbs. Speaking of horror novels, Jenny, I'm in the process of writing a novel like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, but with guys. Ooh.
All right.
That sounds fantastic, actually.
Yeah.
When you finish it, like, send me and I'll read it, because that sounds intriguing.
That was a good movie.
I actually love that movie. Yeah. But that's a great fucking idea.
If it's cool, she'll review it.
Yeah.
If it's not good, she's not gonna review it because it'll fuck you up. She'll say, "Oh, this book sucks."
No, well, I've had that happen a few times where like I was contacted by an author and they were like, hey, I'll send you a book if you review it, and I'm just like, sure, because I'm a nice person, and then I read it, I'm like, oh man, this is really not good. What am I gonna say? And then I was like, I always have to be like super like diplomatic.
Yeah.
About it.
Were you
now some of the ones that I've gotten were actually like really, really good, so I didn't have to be that way.
So the ones that weren't any good, did you do the review?
Yeah.
You did the review anyway, but you were diplomatic about the review?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's like, here, I'm a writer too.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, I know, it sucks like having somebody like shit on something that you've spent months and years of your life working on.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm really hesitant to like do that to somebody else. But then on the other hand, I was like, well, I try to be like,
constructive.
Yeah. I think a lot of the problems, usually boil down to they just need an editor because their grammar is not good or something like that. Like a lot of it's that kind of stuff, which can be fixed. You know what I mean?
Okay. So it's not usually story. It's usually just grammar.
Not necessarily. It's usually shit like that. But to be honest, if you're going to be a writer, you really, really need to master grammar and spelling. I mean, I would advise. Because otherwise you're going to have assholes like me reading it going, Jesus Christ.
Man, they were saying on that...
Where did you go to school?
They were saying on that Event Horizon show that new AI fucking supercomputer they have can write fucking any kind of book. They say it's awesome. And that they can write movie scripts better than a Hollywood movie. And you give it the parameters of what you want the story to be like, and it'll write a fucking it'll write 4 or 5 different versions of that story. And if you don't like a thing, it'll go, okay, then I'll change it.
Yeah, you can fix that.
So you can fix it. Yeah, they say that shit is going to put writers in Hollywood out of business. That's how good it writes.
Yeah,
I'd like to read some of that shit.
Ben says, speaking of which, I need your postal address to send you something. Can you advise I emailed you? Yeah, well, if you emailed me, unless it went in my junk folder, then I'll send you the postal address, like, if I see the email. If not, then, I mean, you can message me on Facebook, or Facebook would probably be the best. That'd probably be the most likely that I would see it. But Instagram works, too. So just go to the 13 o'clock page and send me a message on there, and I will probably see it. You know, because I haven't seen the email today, but, like, I haven't checked it for several hours, so I don't really know. So, yeah, so let's see, where was I? Okay. So she's in there for 6-7 hours. Finally, she's like, hey, I want a Whopper. And they're like, okay, well, you can have one if you come out. So she actually came out and, like, surrendered peacefully, brought out her guns and laid them down on the ground, like, along with all the ammo that she had. And they took her into custody. Apparently, allegedly, she was very interested. She was kind of like, well, is this going to be on, is this on TV? And they're like, yeah, there's TV, you know, crews and stuff all around here. And she's like, are you going to put handcuffs on me? Like, she seemed very interested. She really wanted them, I guess she really wanted to be seen on TV with handcuffs on. So, like I said, she seemed to have, like, a weird fantasy about, I think she said, too, one of the things she said to the reporters over the phone was something like, my dad is going to flip out. Like, that was one of the things that she said. So, I guess, I mean, she for real did this for attention. I mean, that's for sure. But, I don't know. It's kind of a messed up way to get attention. I mean, can't you just get a tattoo or, like, a weird piercing or something like that? Come on. But, just don't shoot innocent people. Just pro tip. So yeah. Now, apparently, here's where some sources differ too, because I feel like there's been some details of this case that have been changed, or not changed necessarily, but embellished, like, in some tellings of the story, because some tellings of the story say that when the police went into the house, like, to gather up the rest of the stuff, they said it was kind of like, not necessarily squalor, but it was kind of like in disarray, I guess. And they said there was, like, empty whiskey bottles and, like, empty beer bottles around the house. And one of the things that Brenda Spencer would later claim at one of her many parole hearings was that, oh, I was so fucked up on drugs and alcohol at the time of the shooting that I don't even remember what happened. However, as they would usually do, after they arrested her, they did a toxicology test and they found zero trace of drugs or alcohol in her system. So she was just making that up. Now, one thing that I did hear, they said, another source that I saw said there actually wasn't liquor bottles, like empty liquor bottles all over the house, but there was, like, a bottle of, I believe it was whiskey that was, like, right near the door where she'd been shooting from, and it was only about a quarter full. But since they didn't find any alcohol in her blood, like when they did the toxicology after they took her into custody, it wasn't her that was drinking it. And they're not real clear about where it came from, because I think her dad had been an alcoholic, but I think that he was on the wagon. So I don't think that he actually allowed alcohol in the house. So she might have got it somewhere else. But like I said, because they did the toxicology and they didn't find any alcohol in her system, then it wasn't her that was drinking it. So I don't really know where it came from. So, yeah, so they took her into custody, like I said, completely peacefully. Now, even though she was only 16 years old, because of the severity of the crime, obviously they decided pretty much immediately that they were going to try her as an adult. Now, what they actually said was that they were like, okay, well, you can do a plea deal. They're like, if you plead guilty to the 2 murder charges, then we'll give you, then maybe you'll get like 25 to life with the possibility of parole. They're like, on the other hand, if you plead not guilty and it ends up going to trial, then we might end up charging you, like, not only with 2 murders, but also, I think they charge her with 2 murders and also, like, assault with a deadly weapon. But they said then we also charge you with the 8 additional charges of, like, you know, attempted murder, because, you know, the 8 people that were wounded. You know, and then there's a chance that, you know, you might get life without parole. So her attorney advised her to take the plea deal. So that's essentially what she did. Like, she didn't go to trial. They didn't send her to juvie. She stayed in juvie, like, while they were going through all the legal wrangling and stuff like that. But in the end, she actually did plead guilty to the 2 murders and assault with a deadly weapon charges. And they just gave her 25 to life with the possibility of parole. Now, her first parole hearing was actually in 1993, and she's had ones, I think, every 4 years since then, but every single time, like, it's always been denied. And I think the last one was in 2022, and that one was denied also. Like I said, I don't think they're ever going to let her out. And I think it's mainly, well, it's for various reasons, but I think it's mainly because she doesn't, even though she does express remorse for what she did, and she seems to feel bad that she's like, oh, and now every time she hears about a school shooting nowadays, she always wonders, like, oh, did they get the idea from me? And she, like, because she was kind of like the first one, you know what I mean? But because she keeps coming up with other excuses and, like, other reasons, like, every single time, they're just concerned that she hasn't really learned anything, or she hasn't really like owned what she did, you know what I mean? Like, taken responsibility for it. So let's talk about this girl. So she was, like I said, she was 16 years old in 1979, and she had lived in a suburb of San Diego, which is called San Carlos, and I believe she lived there her entire life. Now, the house that she lived in across from Grover Cleveland, she lived there with her parents. Now, she had an older sister who I think her name was Teresa. Teresa was off at college when this incident occurred. She also had an older brother, I believe, whose name was Scott. And he was kind of a little bit of a troublemaker too. Not bad, but kind of, you know, like druggy and stuff like that. And at the time of this incident, he was like just off kind of like wandering around the country, you know what I mean? So he wasn't like living in the house. And I don't think her and her brother were kind of close, but her and her sister, not so much. So she was like kind of an isolated kid. Like I said, she was very small. She's only 5'2", very, very skinny, like back then, not anymore. But yeah, she had like really, really long, like red hair, and very, very tomboyish, very quiet, kind of bookish. You know, she had a couple of friends, but she wasn't obviously like real super popular or anything like that. Now, a lot of her teachers said that she was actually very intelligent, even though she didn't really seem to give much of a shit about school and was kind of like falling asleep in class and not really paying attention. But when she applied herself, she seemed to be really good, particularly at creative type stuff, poetry. She was actually like a really good photographer. She won some awards for photography. Particularly, I think she really liked animals, so she took like a lot of pictures of animals. I think there were some reports later that she was kind of one of those wild shows, like, oh, she was, you know, abusing animals and all this other kind of stuff. I don't think that's necessarily true. There were also some reports too that she was like this big druggie and this big alcoholic. According to her brother, he said she wasn't really a drinker. It said she might have smoked some pot on occasion, but you know, later on, I think they were trying to make her seem like more of a monster than she actually was. So they were saying, oh my God, she was, you know, doing all the drugs and, you know, a drunk and all this other kind of stuff. And he's like, that's not really the case. Like I said, maybe she smoked some pot, but it wasn't really that big of a deal. Because like I said, later on, she said, oh, on the day of the shooting, she's like, oh, I was drinking whiskey all day and I was smoking marijuana laced with PCP and like all this other kind of stuff. I'm like, the toxicology report found nothing. There was nothing in her system, no drugs, no alcohol, no nothing. And then when they confronted her with that information, she said, oh, well, the reports must have been falsified. There are 2 reports. That's what she said, like in the interview. Well, there must be 2 reports because I was completely fucked up. But the thing about it is that when they arrested her, like when she surrendered, they're like, she did not seem intoxicated or impaired in any way whatsoever. She was walking normally. They didn't, you know, she wasn't staggering or nothing like that. She just seemed completely normal. So there was that. So her parents divorced when she was about 10. Now her mom's name is Dot and her dad's name is Wallace or Wally. Now the mom says, and I've seen like some interviews with her mom, and I don't want to shit on her mom too much, but I will say, I don't think her mom abused her or anything like that. But her mom did come across as a little, what's a good way of putting it? Emotionally detached. I don't think that her and her kids were particularly close. And it seemed like she wasn't real affectionate. It seemed like she wasn't real proactive in relating to them. I don't know. I wouldn't go so far as to say like she didn't give a shit or she didn't care about them, but she really did seem, like when Brenda was a teenager, she kind of like distanced herself a little bit. And she was just like, oh, well, after her and Wallace got divorced, she was just kind of like, oh, well, I left it up to Brenda, like if she wanted to come see me or not. Like she didn't really seem to make an effort like to maintain a relationship with her daughter. And she didn't really seem to know what was going on in her life, or I don't know. So it really seemed like she was very detached.
Yeah, well, that kind of sounds like some of the families of the male serial killers. It's not open abuse against them. It's just kind of like neglect. The parents don't.
Yeah.
The parents don't really seem to care one way or the other. Dahmer's parents were kind of like that.
Yeah.
Like in, where.
Which in a lot of ways is just as bad.
Yeah,
I mean,
just like, yeah,
in
whatever.
the end,
He does what he wants to do. That type of deal. And the other one, what's in it? Ted Bundy's parents were kind of like that. Well, it turns out his sister was his parent. And his parents were his grandparents. He didn't know about that.
Yeah.
But they were just kind of indifferent.
Yeah,
So-
I kind of got the feeling that that's what was happening here too.
It's almost like attention-seeking behavior.
Like I said, the mom, she didn't come across to me, like, I don't know her, okay? But it's just like in the interviews, she didn't come across as like a bad person or anything like that. But she just came across as very, like I said, just very detached. And from everything I've heard, she seemed kind of detached at the time. Now, so they got divorced. I think Brenda was 10. And according to Dot, the mom, she said it was because Wallace was fucking around on her. Wallace denies this. However, there was a situation. This is so weird. Wallace apparently comes to Dot and says, would you still, like, take me back if I just, like, left for a year, or we separated for a year, and like, could I come back after? Like, he didn't want to divorce her, like he still wanted that to fall back on, I guess, but he wanted to go like fuck around or like do whatever he wanted for a year. And Dot was like, yeah, no, that's not happening. So that was kind of when they got divorced. Now the weird thing that happened with this too, and this is, you know, maybe not as unusual nowadays, but very unusual for 1979, was that when they got divorced, Wallace got custody of the kids. No one's entirely sure why this is. It's not because the mom was abusive or anything like that, because usually that would be the situation. But from everything that I read, it seemed like what happened was that the older kids, like Brenda's older siblings, Scott and Teresa, they preferred to live with their dad, maybe allegedly, because their dad was less inclined to kind of like fog up on them and like check what they were doing. Like he was more permissive. That was the speculation anyway. And so because the older kids wanted to go live with the dad, then the judge was like, well, I don't want to break up, you know, all of the siblings. So then Brenda ended up going and living with the dad as well. So the mom goes off and lives by herself, and then Brenda would go and visit her mom every now and then, but then like she started doing it less and less. And like I said, her mom didn't really seem to care all that much, like if she came or not. You know what I mean? At least according to most. I mean, the mom actually kind of like denies this, but that was kind of the way it came off to me. So what ends up happening is that, so they move in with the dad, and like I said, the older sister, she goes off to college, and Scott goes off wandering around doing whatever he's doing because he's a little bit older too. So it's basically just Brenda and her dad living in this house. Now, her dad, as far as I know, was an alcoholic, but I think, like I said, that he was on the wagon. So I don't think he was drinking anymore. Now, he's dead now. He died in 2016. He was 84 or something like that. But I saw an interview with him. And I'm not going to, like I said, I don't know the dude, and I don't know if the allegations that Brenda later made about him are true, but the dude came off a little weird, and I can't quite put my finger on what was bothering me about him. Like, I don't know, he just came across as really weird, because there was this documentary that was made, I think it was made in 2006 or 2008 or something like that, and this British crew that were making the documentary, no one had really interviewed him, like, in all this time. And they actually went to the house because, like I said, he lived in the same house, as far as I know, like until he died, like the same house that she shot from. And he lived there all his life. So they actually went there And at first he wouldn't come out and like talk to them, but then after a while he's like, okay, I'll come out and talk to you, but I have to come out and like we have to talk in the yard. Like he wouldn't let them come inside the house, which again I thought was, so I don't know if it was
Might have
like
been filthy in there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Maybe it was filthy in there or there was some weird shit going on. But he seemed kind of weird.
Filthy.
So the thing about it, and they were asking him about this because this was when this documentary came out was right around, I think it was 2006, and Brenda had just had one of her parole hearings. And at this particular parole hearing, her excuse this time, because like I said, her excuse before had been on, I was so fucked up on drugs and alcohol that I didn't remember, that I didn't know what I was doing. And like I said, they were like, well, obviously that's a lie because the toxicology report said you were totally sober, so no parole for you. But this time around, she actually said that she had been sexually abused by her father for many years, and so she was, I guess she was trying to garner sympathy. Like I said, I'm not a person that's gonna like deny people's allegations of sexual abuse because I know it happens a lot and that's a shitty thing to do, but in her case I'm not really sure if it's true. That said, her dad is pretty weird. Now it is pretty widely reported that you know, and this might even be on the Wikipedia page. I'm not entirely sure. I don't really remember. But it said that her and her dad shared a bed or like shared a mattress like in a room. Now, I don't think this is the case. They asked the dad about this and he said, oh, well, we used to share a bedroom, but we had separate beds. And I assume that he meant, because I think the house has 3 bedrooms. So I assume he meant that when the other 2 teenagers were living there, like I'm assuming the older sister and the older brother had their own rooms and then there was 1 bedroom left. So Brenda and her dad were like, you know, in beds on opposite sides of the room, which is weird, but understandable. Because when the cops went in the house, like after the shooting, they didn't say anything about that. Like, so I'm assuming that Brenda had her own room at that point because by that point her 2 older siblings were gone. So it was just her and her dad. And like I said, I'm pretty sure it was a 3-bedroom house. So I think the allegations about her sharing a bed with her dad are not true, but I think that is like reported a lot. But I am going to say, here's one weird thing that maybe gives some credibility to the sexual abuse allegations. So Wallace divorced, you know, Brenda's mom, Dot. And then, like, after Brenda was incarcerated, I think this might have been when she was still in juvie, because here's the thing, she was in juvie a little bit, like, before the shooting incident, because it turns out that she had actually shot at that same school with a pellet gun, like a BB gun, I believe a year before the actual murderous shooting. And she'd like stolen some shit from there too. Like she'd broken into the school and shot the windows out and stuff. Like nobody was there at the time, but she had done that. And so she was on probation for that. So I don't know if it was during this time period or if it was after the shooting, but her dad would come and visit her in jail, like at juvie or whatever. And her cellmate at the time was this girl, I think her name was Sheila. And Sheila was also a minor. She was 17. When Sheila got out, Brenda's dad, who was at that time about 40 or 41 years old, started a sexual relationship with Sheila, who was 17, got her pregnant, and she had the baby, and then he married her. So Brenda's new stepmom was essentially like the same age as her, or like like a year younger than her. And another weird thing is that not too long
younger? Yeah,
or something like that.
Maybe
Yeah,
a year older.
or the same age or something like that, because that was like her cellmate, like at juvie.
Yeah.
And so like after the baby was born, Sheila fucked off and left the baby with Wallace. And Wallace raised the kid.
Okay.
It was just like a weird, and a lot of people too, I don't know if this is entirely true because I've never seen Sheila, but several sources said that Sheila looked almost exactly like Brenda. So much so that when Sheila moved into the house, like after she married Wallace, some people thought that Brenda had been let out of prison and were like calling the police being like, what the fuck is Brenda doing out? They're like, what are you talking about? Brenda's not out. Yeah. That's how much this girl like supposedly looked like her. So that gives me a little bit of pause that maybe she's not making up the sexual abuse stuff, because that is pretty weird. That's pretty weird for your dad to marry a girl that is the same age as your daughter and looks just like your daughter. Yeah, okay? It's not illegal. It's just, but you know, it's just questionable. That's all.
Yeah, it's weird.
So I'm just saying that's why I don't completely discount the sexual abuse stuff, even though I will say that I listened to part of the parole hearing where she made those at the time? How old 40, 41, something like that.
And he got a 17-year-old wife?
Yeah. Who was his daughter's cellmate. That's how he met her.
That's how he met her, yeah.
Like when he went to visit Brenda. Yeah, see, that's what I said. I was like, Like I said, not illegal, technically. But, you know, not...
That in a way, okay, it's not like he went out and hunted one down that looked like his daughter. She looked like his daughter by pure chance. She just happened to be the daughter's cellmate. By the laws of that state, she wasn't underage, but that shit's fucking untactful. Quite a bit.
A little. That's a good way of putting it.
Very untactful. Weird.
Yeah, it is a little giving the dude some side eye. Type of thing.
You don't go after your daughter's friends.
Yeah, I mean,
even if you can get it, you don't do it.
I mean,
I don't have a daughter.
That's a party foul at the very least. Yeah, because that's fucking creepy. That's why. Like I said, it's not illegal. It's just fucking creepy.
Yeah.
It's creepy.
40-year-old guy and a fucking 17-year-old girl, not a whole lot in common. There's a huge generation gap there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, you know, early 50s, early 30s, I can understand that. That's pretty common. But when you start moving the age back to the fucking late, to the teens.
That's what I mean. Like, the older the people get, like, the less weird it is.
Right, yeah.
Obviously. But it's like, but when you have, like, 40, 50-year-old dudes and, like, a teenager.
Yeah, that's different.
Or even somebody in their early 20s, then you're kind of like,
Yeah.
Like I said, it's not illegal. It's just...
A lot of guys' second wives.
It's just weird.
A lot of guys' second wives when they're late 40s, early 30s. The second wife's in her 30s, you know. Or, you know, late 40s, early 50s. The second wife's in his 30s. That's not unusual.
Yeah, that's not weird. I mean, that's still like a mature...
Because that's an adult.
Woman. That's still an adult.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's not a
she's
fucking teenager or a college student.
Yeah, she's available and she's trying to get married, probably doesn't have any kids, looking for a kid. That kind of stuff, you know what I mean? Just clock ticking. So, you know, that's a lot more understandable. But a 40-year-old and a 17-year-old... That's some side eye.
And especially like his daughters.
Because when I got out of the army at fucking like 25, I wouldn't date a 17-year-old at 25. You know, like I'd be like, nah.
Yeah, and it's like even that's not like a huge gap.
Yeah, like that's a high school
but
girl.
Still.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
or
I mean,
club girl. You know what I mean? Fucking that kind of shit. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, shit, they can't even drink. Well, not legally anyway.
Yeah.
What fun are they?
They're still in school, man.
Right, it's
you
just
can't
like...
take her to the club. You can't get any street cred off that.
I mean, I just kind of feel... I mean,
how cute she is.
How much
gotta
of
go off to college and forget about your ass anyway.
Right. How much of a loser would like a 25-year-old guy? It's like, oh, I got to pick up my girlfriend at high school.
Yeah, high school, yeah.
Like, gotta pick her up from her fucking... She's got chorus practice. Like,
my friends would never would have let me live that down.
That's what I mean. It just seems like I said, that just seems like
yeah.
Fucking, I don't know.
Now, 19, 20, maybe. But 17, no.
Like I said, still in high school.
That's high school. 19's out of high school.
Yeah, you're out of high school.
Yeah. So,
usually in college by then.
Right. Because when I was in the Army in Boston, they could get into nightclubs at 18. They couldn't drink until they were 21, though. So you had them in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same here. You can get in at 18, but they put like an X on your hand, you know. Yeah. You just can't drink. Right. That's all. Although some clubs around here have gone to 21 plus just because they've been getting in trouble.
Yeah.
Because people have been slipping.
The bartenders are
slipping the 18-year-olds booze. Right. Not even so much the bartenders, but like other people. You know what I mean? Like they'll bring older friends. Like.
I gotta admit, I've done it.
Yeah, I think everyone's done it.
Yeah, but, like fucking remember Aaliyah and fucking what was his name? Fucking
Nick.
Nick, yeah. Nick's in the club. He's a fucking full-grown man to me. It's like a guy I'd be in the army with. Here, man, fucking take that shit. And then a couple weeks later, he was 21 anyway.
He's 21 now.
He's 21 now.
Yeah, it was only like a few weeks.
It's like a few weeks.
He was only a few weeks under 21.
Yeah. And that dude was getting high and tripping balls before he was in the club anyway.
That's true.
He's showing up to the club high.
Yeah.
Here, man, have a drink. Come on.
You're all right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so whether or not, I don't know. So like I said, at this particular parole hearing, I guess maybe it was like earlier than I'm thinking it was. Maybe it was in 2001 that she said this. But she did come out. But the fact that she never said this, she never accused her dad of sexual abuse before. And her other siblings, as much as I don't really think that the other siblings talk all that much about it, but I mean, understandably, they just don't want anything to do with this shit because they weren't that close to their sister, I guess. So they said, that no, none of that was going on. And, and I don't even think the mom thought any of that was going on either. So I don't know how true it is. But like I said, it is very, very weird that the dad married someone that was the same age and the same appearance as his daughter. I mean, that's a little, like I said, it just makes me kind of like raise my eyebrows a little bit is all I'm saying. So there's that. Now, also too, like the documentary I was watching where they actually interviewed this dude, like in his yard, like I said, the yard across from the school where the shooting took place. He seemed very surprised that because the documentary crew had just come from the parole hearing, like they'd filmed it. And so they said, do you know that at the parole hearing, your daughter said that, you sexually abused her, blah, blah, blah. And he seemed shocked by that. What? She said that? When did she say that? You know what I mean? But I don't know. Like I said, I can't really put my finger on what bothered me about him, though, because he came across as, man, I don't know. He didn't seem drunk, but there was something the matter with him.
He was 85 though, right?
No.
Okay.
Not in this. This was like
Okay.
2001 or something
All right.
like that. So he was still, not young, but he was like, much younger than 85. He was 85 when he died.
He was just hiding something.
He was probably in his 60s, I
Yeah.
imagine.
He was hiding something.
Yeah, he just came across as like kind of weird and like creepy to me. And I mean, like, he was only married to the 17-year-old for however long the pregnancy, 9 months, obviously, or something like that. Because after the baby was born, apparently the girl was like, yeah, I'm out.
She split. I don't leave the
She
baby
split
there.
and left the baby there.
Whatever happened to her?
I'm not real sure.
She belongs to the streets?
I don't know. And I don't know what happened to the kid either. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they'd be an adult now, but I think the kid turned out all right. But I don't know. It was like
Maybe the kid went to her parents.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure. But yeah, that was just like a whole fucking weird situation all around. So I don't know. Like I said, the family dynamic there just seemed real. I mean, the thing about it was that Brenda and her dad, they seemed like he didn't really seem all that into or interested in what she was doing. Another thing too, when going back to her mom, because remember how I was saying how her mom was like super detached and everything?
Yeah.
This is some crazy shit too. When the authorities called her mom to tell her, hey, have you heard about the shooting at Cleveland Elementary? We're pretty sure like your daughter is the main suspect. You need to get down here. All Dot said was, oh, well, I'm at work and I can't leave right now. That's like all she said. Like, she didn't even really give a shit. Like, oh my God, my daughter is in trouble or anything like that, which a normal person would do.
Yeah.
Like, I need to get down there right away. She's like, oh, well, she worked at a golf course, I think, like, and she was like, oh, well, I have all this money and I can't leave it and blah, blah, blah. And the cops were like, you need to get down here, like, right now, okay? Yeah. You know what I mean? So the fact that she was just kind of like, that's all she cared about was work, even though her daughter had just been accused of murder.
Maybe it didn't really strike. Maybe it really didn't hit her the reality of it.
Maybe
she couldn't process it. Maybe.
But it did seem kind of.
I've been told things just out of the blue, and it took me a while to process what I was being told.
Yeah, that's true.
It might have been that.
That's true. But yeah. So, like I said, so she grew up with her dad, and her dad were apparently pretty close, but more like buddy close. Not really like where she could tell him anything, about her feelings or whatever. They would go out target shooting and all this other kind of stuff. Now, she also kind of had trouble in school. Like I said, she wasn't dumb. She was actually, like, very intelligent. But she really didn't seem to care much about school. She didn't really like authority figures. So she kind of started skipping school a lot. So they actually sent her to another school, like a special school for, truants and like problem children and stuff like that. And while she was there, they did like a psychological evaluation of her, and they determined that she was suffering from terrible depression and that she was possibly suicidal. So they told her, and like I said, around this time too, she had shot out the windows of that same school and like broke in there and like stole some shit and stuff too. So she got in trouble for that. So they had sent her to a special school, and essentially they went to her dad and said, they recommended that she be admitted to a mental hospital for observation because, like I said, they thought that she, was having some problems and that maybe she was going to do herself some harm. And her dad at that point said no, he wouldn't give permission for her to be put in the hospital because he's like, well, I can handle that myself. So a few months after this, the people at the school told her, hey, we think she might be suicidal and she needs some help. And her dad said, no, I'm going to take care of it. A few months after that, for Christmas of 1978, her dad, Wallace, gave her a Ruger 22 semi-automatic 22 caliber rifle for a Christmas present, along with a bunch of ammunition.
Must have been a 1022.
Yeah, it was. Had a telescopic sight on it, and everything.
Those things have been around forever. They're a good little rifle. Just it was a family rifle. Yeah. No.
But he gave her that for Christmas. Now, I've heard two different stories about this. The most famous story is that Brenda actually did not ask for the gun. She had actually wanted a radio, and her dad gave her the gun instead.
Probably because he wanted it.
I mean, they had been out, like, they did go out target shooting all the time, like, and so it wasn't weird that he would give her that for a present because that was something that they did together.
They weren't that expensive in the time you're talking about.
But she did say, like, on many, that like she hadn't really asked for one specifically. But then I heard like another source that said no, she really did ask for one and that she kept bugging him about it and then he finally bought it. So I don't know if that's the case or not. But the most famous story is that she didn't ask for one and that she got it for Christmas anyway, and that she perceived this as her dad suggesting to her that she kill herself. Because like I said, she was suicidal, and the fact that the school authorities had told him that and he had just kind of blown it off, that apparently kind of made something of an impression on her.
I don't buy that. I don't buy that story.
I'm just saying that's what...
Chances are she wanted a radio, he gave her a fucking rifle because they went out shooting anyway, and he probably wanted a rifle too. She says, this would be a good compromise. I'll give her something that I want. Isn't that quite a compromise? But I don't think it probably had anything to do with her killing herself.
That's how a lot of people buy gifts, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's what it was.
Every time I don't know why I always think of that, but every time that happens, I always think of that. I don't even remember what year this came out, but that Simpsons episode where Homer gives Marge a bowling ball for Christmas.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Because it's like, that's what he wants.
That's what he wanted,
And she gets so mad that just to spite him, she goes and takes bowling lessons and then ends up kind of getting romanced by the bowling instructor.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know why I remember that, but it's like, I just thought that was so funny.
The 1022 was a nice little family trainer, plinker. It did a little bit of everything. Light hunting target, just familiarization training. Came with a lot of good accessories, though. They're still around today, but in the day that they're talking about, they weren't expensive. Maybe $100. So it's not like he's not reaching too deep in the pocket for the gift to begin with. It was just.
So he's a cheapskate, is what you're
saying.
I'm not saying. I'm just kidding.
It's just he isn't really going out of his way to fucking buy something super expensive. It's just entry level, basic, real basic. But probably limited income family, It was just an okay gift.
Yeah, I mean, by all accounts, they were a pretty... I don't know if it was, like, crushing poverty, but they weren't... I heard that, like, the inside of the house, like, when they went in there, I don't think it was as fucking wrecked as, like, some later accounts said it was, like, with the whiskey bottles everywhere and stuff. But they did say that it looked... I think they said this on Once Upon a Crime, that it looked more like a bachelor pad than like a family house. Yeah. And I don't know if like Wallace was fucking around on the wife. She said he was. He said he wasn't. But she said that Dot, the mom, she said that when Wallace came to her and made the proposition, hey, would you still wait for me or be here if I took off for a year and just like fucked around or did whatever, and she was like, fuck that, like, no, absolutely not. What she didn't know at the time was that he'd already like rented an apartment and like all this other kind of stuff. So
he's gonna want to move out on his own for a little while.
Yeah, and then wanted her to still be there, like when he got back, like I said, to fall back on. And
he needed
she's
to
like,
take a break.
And she's like, no, that's not how that works.
He needed to take a break.
I guess. Well, like I said, if you saw the dude, like I said, he's dead now. He died in 2016, but I don't know. There was just something really weird about him, and I couldn't like put my finger on what it was.
He wanted to take a year off,
I guess. Now, the mom has gone on record as saying she blames him, that she blames him for Brenda doing what she did because he bought her the gun, and he also didn't, he wouldn't allow her to receive mental health treatment, even though several, people at the school and things like that, like, suggested that she needed it. They were even going to hospitalize her, like I said, because they were worried about her, but he would not allow it. So
I got a feeling he's one of those guys that didn't believe in that kind of shit. It's like, oh, there's nothing wrong with her. She'll outgrow it.
I kind of got that impression.
He's one of those kind of guys.
I kind of got that impression too.
With, oh, it's not serious.
Well, and like I said, I kind of feel like, I mean, this was 1979. Mental health was really not where it is today. I feel like nowadays it's probably taken a lot more seriously. Like back then, it was just kind of suck it up, you're fine. You know what I mean? It was still very much like that.
Yeah. I think with
that helps no one. I'm sorry.
I think with this little chick, what the deal was is that she's high testosterone, got hormonal imbalances, very tomboyish. She has a lot of male features, and she's a fucking psychopath. And depressed.
Another thing too, I forgot to mention.
She has boy fantasies, the fantasies that boys have, which is fantasies that evil boys have. Which is I'm gonna be a criminal.
Like I said, very, very unusual for a girl.
Yeah.
Very unusual for a girl that age.
So I think there's going to be a hormonal thing here.
Another thing, too, that I forgot to mention was that a couple of things. One, when she was in custody and they did, physical exams and things like that, they actually did find that she had some damage to her temporal lobe.
Yeah.
There's that old head injury. Turns out that she had a bicycle accident. I believe she hit a pole when she was younger and had damaged her temporal lobe. It wasn't drastic, but
maybe enough. Maybe a contributing factor.
But enough. Also, they determined that she had a particular kind of, and I don't know if it was caused by the injury or not, but she did have a particular kind of temporal lobe epilepsy.
Yeah.
Which is associated, like generally epilepsy is not associated with violent outcomes, but the particular type of epilepsy I believe that she was diagnosed with did, one of the effects was violent outbursts and things like that.
No boyfriends, no interest in boys.
She came out later as a lesbian, and she later said that she knew she was a lesbian from birth, or as soon as she, that. But I don't, I don't know. So that might have been another contributing factor, is that, like I said, this is still 1979, and that was obviously not as acceptable back then. So maybe she thought she was crazy. Maybe she was like confused, and she didn't really have anybody to turn to.
Right. She wanted to be a boy
to talk to about it. So that might have been another contributing factor. Also, and this is strange because, like I said, I was listening to Once Upon a Crime, and they mentioned something on there that most of the other things about Brenda Spencer don't mention. And I don't know if this is true or not, so take it with a grain of salt. It's very likely that it's true because the rest of the podcast, it was an hour long and it seemed very well researched, like they had a lot of details in there. But apparently, Brenda was friends with this boy named Brent. Brent, I think it was Brent. And he was actually younger than her. I think he was only 13 or 14. And according to family members, neighbors, things like that, Brenda had been a perfectly nice girl. Like, all the kids in the neighborhood liked her, and she was just a lovely person until she started hanging out with this kid. So they're because this kid, they said, was a shithead, and everybody was happy when he moved away.
So he was a bad influence on her.
So yeah, so they said that might have been a contributing factor too. The two of them, like he would come over her house and they would watch cop shows together, and they'd be like, "Yeah, we're gonna kill some pigs and all that kind of stuff." Yeah. So they were getting off all into these like violent fantasies and whatnot. So that might be another. And like I said, a lot of other things about Brenda Spencer don't bring him up. So I don't really know. Like the first time I heard about it was on Once Upon a Crime, that she was friends with this little boy.
So. No interest in boys. She doesn't have a girlfriend. She's got a little 13-year-old boyfriend who's a bad influence on her. So what you're dealing with is sexual frustration too. She's not getting laid.
Yeah, I'm sure that
16,
wasn't.
She's not getting laid. She's not getting laid. She can't get what she wants. She's frustrated. I'd have prescribed her to fucking, at the age of 16, is to find her a 16 and 17-year-old fucking boy and a girl, and they have a fucking threesome.
Might have chilled her out.
Chill her the fuck out. Have that old boy fucking blow her back out. And then fucking she's got the girl there, and she could sort it out. She could figure out what she likes best. That's fucking that diffuse all that shit. Have her floating on air for a couple weeks. She'd feel a lot better about herself.
Maybe.
Probably would have diffused a lot of that
Maybe.
shit.
I mean, that's the thing. She seemed to have like some other problems too, but
sounded like she just needed a good influence in her life and some good experience, but she's coming out of this fucking depressing ass home with a fucking creepy ass dad in a fucking disheveled old fucking apartment, disheveled old house that looks all like a bachelor's pad. There's no fucking feminine touch to herself or anything in her environment.
And her mom seems kind of like checked out, so she can't really. She, like I said, it seemed like she was going through a time when
that's what's going on.
She didn't really have
confusion.
Anybody to turn to, so it just seemed like she started lashing out like in the most destructive way possible.
Should have taken her and fucking just dolled her up and just the cutest outfit ever, just lipstick, lesbian like crazy, and fucking throw her into a fucking teenage threesome, and she'd figure it out. Smoke a joint, listen to fucking Pink Floyd.
Like everyone did.
Like everybody else did.
Come on.
Have some fucking Led Zeppelin, House of the Holy. 71, that was around, wasn't it? No, Houses of the Holy, I think, was fucking like more like 75, wasn't it? She could have listened to Black Sabbath, though.
That's true.
She'd be listening to Black Sabbath.
Zach said, "Holy shit, having a three-way to cover the fact you're gay, that's actually fucking genius, Tom."
Yeah.
He thinks of all the angles.
I fucking all the angles. She could have sex with that girl through that boy. Like, or she could flip it any other way she wants. She'd figure it out.
Possibilities.
You don't know.
We're all about the possibilities.
It might resolve some issues, and she just decides she likes everything.
Yeah, and well, like I said, the shitty thing, it was 1979. Like I said, mental health stuff wasn't the way it was. Like, people didn't really understand it as well as they understand it nowadays. People's understanding of sexuality was not like it is nowadays. So I kind of feel like, if she was 16 now, I don't think that she would ever act out in this manner. I could be wrong about that, but I feel some serial killers, I feel like, whenever they were born, they would probably just be like a horrible fucking person. But some of the ones, like I said, like Jeffrey Dahmer, like people like that, I think if they were born in a different era or, were raised under different circumstances, they might have turned out okay.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like this girl maybe, I mean, I'm not saying she doesn't have problems, because she does. And like I said, and it really does trouble me that she doesn't seem to still really take responsibility for what she did, because she's always kind of trying to come up with excuses. Also, I don't think she's ever really reached a level of emotional maturity, because one of the reasons more recently, I believe it was 2009, please forgive me if I'm wrong, but one of her parole hearings, the reason they didn't give her parole that time was because she had a girlfriend in prison, and they had broken up, and I guess it was like a bad breakup, and she took it really badly. So she took a paper clip and heated it up and basically carved letters into herself. So self-harm is essentially. So they were like, well, the fact that you did that shows that you can't really deal with life. You know what I mean? Because it was just a breakup, and it's like she couldn't deal with it, and you fucking cut, you carved letters into yourself. And I believe that what she carved in there, she said it was runes, and the words were unforgiven and alone. Those were the words she said she carved in there. So like I said, and that I believe that was 2009. So they're like, yeah, again, no parole for you.
She's fucking drama queening.
That's what I mean. So
She's been living in captivity, so her ego hasn't grown very much. You know what I mean? They're still kind of small people, not much outside experience with life.
Yeah, I mean, kind of stunted.
She's still a teenager. Yeah.
Yeah, she seemed kind of sad. Yeah, that's what I thought. Like, I was like, that sounds like what something a teenager would do. And apparently that's the parole board thought that as well.
Yeah, well, how do they expect her to be normal? Come on.
Right, and that's the thing. Yeah. Well, the weird thing about it is, like, I saw another little bit of an interview with her where she was talking about she was excited about getting out, like, during some of her earlier parole hearings. Because, like I said, she started having parole hearings in 1993, but she still hasn't got parole. You know, they keep denying it. And then the last few years, she
can't survive.
Well, yeah, I don't think she's ever going to get released. Like I said, in California, they said if you did a murder, like, even if you have, like, possibility of parole, they hardly ever let anybody out on parole that did a murder.
She could only be in some kind of minimum security kind of assisted living facility. She can't have a civilian job. She couldn't survive.
Yeah, because, they were asking her...
She'd be right back in jail because she couldn't hang out there.
Yeah, well, like I said, she's never lived as an adult. Yeah. And, like, 1979, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The world has changed, like, immensely since then. And I don't know if she'd be able to deal with it.
She didn't know the world even back then.
Right. Yeah, I mean, she seemed kind of, like, isolated and out of it back then as well. So... that's the thing. I mean, like I said, during some of her, like, earlier parole hearings, she seemed, like, kind of excited. I think, like, during the ones they were having in the 90s, because she was like, oh, she'd been, you know, training, like, she had all these job skills and stuff like that. Like, they, you know, she drove a forklift and all this other kind of stuff. So she was talking about, oh, I'm going to get out and I'm going to be a forklift driver and all this other shit. But then, like, they didn't let her out. And then, like, they just kept not letting her out every time. Just because every time she had a parole hearing, like I said, every time she would come up with something different. Like, the first time she was like, oh, I was so drunk and high, I don't remember what happened. And they're like, yeah, we know that's not true because we saw the toxicology reports. At which point she was like, oh, well, there was another set of toxicology reports. Those were the fake ones that were at, you know, and they're like, okay, whatever. You know, and then, like, at one thing she was saying she didn't remember anything that happened, and then she was saying, oh, my dad sexually abused me, like, trying to get sympathy. Like I said, I'm not saying he didn't, because he does come across as kind of like a creeper, but, you know, I realize he's dead now and he can't defend himself. I'm just saying that's how he came across to me. So it's like, I don't know if that's false or not, but still. But it's just the way she... You know, and then I think at the last parole hearing that they had where she gave an excuse... she actually said, that's right, she said she was hallucinating and that when she was shooting at people, she thought she was shooting at commandos that were attacking her.
She's full of shit.
Right? So it's like, so every single time she keeps coming up with a new story, which is why they're not going to let her out. No. I kind of feel like maybe she's self-sabotaging. I don't think she wants to get out.
Scared to come out.
I mean, I'd be scared to come out too if I was her.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I mean, she's all right in there. She's in an all-women's prison. She's okay.
Yeah. But, I mean, yeah, so...
she likes girls. She's going to be up there with those girls. That's, you know... it'd be like locking me up with a bunch of girls. Oh, my God, they're locking me up in a girls' school. I'm not going to survive. I'm not going to survive. Get me out of here. Yeah.
What if they all want to peg you, Tom?
Yeah, Jenny knows how to fucking... Jenny's sadistic. Jenny's sadistic. She knows how to spin that shit around. She knows how to spin a male fantasy around and fucking get you flaccid as a motherfucker. Oh, okay. Yeah, you got it.
It's my superpower.
It's her superpower. It's to fuck up a man's dreams.
I can't help it. Whenever somebody has this big, like, hopeful balloon they're blowing up, I just want to pop it. I've always been like that.
I think I understand what happened. You know, it's teenage years. It's hard for everybody.
It is.
For straight people, though, especially if you're lucky and you're on your game, your first experiences, you know, with fucking the opposite sex are quite fun in high school, quite satisfying. But for gay people, especially back in those days, your first experiences, of course, probably be fucking heartbreak. Because the chances are there aren't any other gay people in your high school.
Or no one that's going to admit it anyway. Especially if it's not,
get your ass beat.
You're right, if you
or
can't
you're going to fucking fall in love with somebody who fucking is going to think you're a freak. So a lot of them had to just hold on until they were old enough to go to nightclubs before they could have a real life. So, you know, their early experiences fucking were heartache.
Yeah.
And that's probably what's happening with this girl here. She's a lesbian, or thinks she is. Feels that she is, you know. And she's not getting laid. And probably the girls she likes doesn't want anything to do with her. So she goes down this path. She thinks she's a boy, wants to shoot up all the fucking cops. Crap like that. Threesome would have worked it out, though. Zach, I'm right. I'm right about that. That'd have worked it out.
I mean, how'd you got her when she was young? I just, again, this is kind of a thing where it just always seems like there had to be like a perfect storm of factors that led up to this. Even though it seems like, you know, it seems like she was just normal and then she woke up one day and said, hey, I'm going to shoot up a school. You know, there were obviously things leading up to that. And she had planned it because allegedly some of her classmates said that a few days before the shooting or a week before the shooting or something like that, she did actually say something to the effect of, oh, I'm going to do something really big that's going to get me on TV.
She's been thinking about it.
So, and some, like on Once Upon a Crime, she was speculating that maybe Brenda did it to impress her little dirtbag friend, you know, like, and show him that she was like some big badass or something like that, because because they always talked about that, like they would sit around and watch cop shows being like, yeah, we're gonna plug some cops and shit like that. And so like her actually doing it, because she did actually shoot a cop, he didn't die, but
what's funny is that he's only 13.
I think he was only 13.
Right.
Like,
well,
he was...
that's kind of like a girlfriend, isn't it? That's like a little butch girlfriend.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's her little butch girlfriend. But you see, that's not satisfying her either, because that's not a real girl. That's not a real little butch girl. You know?
Yeah.
That's just a little boy.
It's just a little 13.
It's just a little 13-year-old boy. But that's her surrogate.
Who's a little miscreant.
Yeah. she's wishing that was a girl and that she was fucking 17 and just like that. Because if you ask me, a lot of butch girls, you ask me, they're just like little boys. That's how they come across to me. That's how they feel. They don't feel like men. They feel like little boys to me. They're like they're emulating the fashion cues too of boys. But they find that attractive. So yeah, that's her little butch girlfriend, the 13-year-old boy. Don't you a bit.
And maybe it was, and honestly, like I said, you know, on that podcast, I was kind of like, it did seem like that might have been a factor that she was trying to impress that kid.
Yeah.
Because apparently that was something they talked about all the time.
Yeah.
Like doing these kind of violent, especially shooting cops. They were really into, like, they really wanted to shoot.
But then there's the dynamic that he is actually the opposite sex of her. So in a weird way, it's heterosexuality. She's fantasizing that it's lesbianism, but it's actually heterosexuality. Well, I get the mind plays funny tricks, but I guarantee you that all this kind of shit is going on in her head. So there's a lot of conflict.
Yeah, I mean, clearly.
Because it's not making any sense to her.
There had to have been for her to just do this.
Right.
And to be so callous about it.
Yeah.
The way she was just...
She must have somehow disassociated from herself.
It seemed very... Well, and like I said, her family seemed very...
Yeah.
Emotionally distant from one another, so I imagine maybe dissociation came naturally to her.
So now she's seeing herself from the outside. And so she's seeing herself from the outside doing all this. She's not really in charge. She's seeing herself shoot all these people. And she's like, you know, look at her go. You know, it's just, it's going to be something
What a
like,
badass.
What a badass. Look at her go. My little 13-year-old butch boy girlfriend will love me. It's gonna be something like that. Yeah. That's just my feelings about it, and my gut has been. I've always learned to trust my gut. In the end, that shit that's usually what it is, because I don't know. I can call it.
I think in a lot of ways she wanted attention too, because she wasn't getting
this is love and attention.
She wasn't getting any attention from her family. She wasn't getting any attention from schoolmates or friends.
Home life.
Right, she was just very isolated and lonely, I imagine.
And then she had a prison cell mate, and her dad ran off with her. And she was like her, but not like her. So in a way,
she thought about that.
I think maybe she kind of felt that was rejection, maybe.
Maybe so. I mean, that would be super
her
weird.
dad replaced her with
I can't
somebody.
imagine.
Her dad replaced her with a girl that was just like her. And then she lost that girl to her dad if she thought it was her girlfriend. So it's just rejection from both of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you might have a point there. That might be exactly how she saw it.
Yeah. He came and stole my girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he replaced me with her.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, what use am I? Like,
yeah.
I'm just like the third wheel all
exactly.
of a sudden.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it.
So there's that angle.
Yeah. But I mean, this is a fucked up case, man. So, like I said...
It's all real subtle.
Yeah.
All right? But I think we're on it. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of things, I'm sure. Like I said, she had like a head injury too, which, like I said, very common with these types of things.
Well, what that does is that just removes a little bit of her inhibition.
Sure.
So it allows it to happen, but it doesn't really change what she thinks.
Right.
It just makes it easier for her to act on what she's thinking about.
Yeah.
Like drinking a fucking 6-pack. Loosen you up a little bit.
Yeah, and then suddenly you're just like stupid shit that you wouldn't do when you were sober. All of a sudden it's like, oh my god, what a good idea that is. Right. Then the next day you're like, that was really not a good idea. Right. What was I thinking? Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, not too long after the shooting, Bob Geldof actually heard about the shooting when he was in the United States, and it fascinated him so much that he wrote a song about it.
Yeah, Bob Geldof was the original Bono.
Bono,
he was the original Bono. That's where Bono learned to be a douchebag. He learned that shit from fucking Bob Geldof. He's a fucking douche.
Yeah.
He was
I would argue that Bono is a way bigger douche than Bob Geldof.
Much bigger.
Yeah.
And then the biggest cunt out of them all would have been Sting.
I don't know. I feel like
not
Sting
because
is
of political
just like in
bullshit.
between.
It's just that he was always trying to fuck your woman using his tantric energy.
Yeah.
He motherfucker was a prick. Fucking smirky ass fucking prick. You know he's trying to fuck your woman. Look at Sting. Just look at
Although I will give Sting credit because he never really seems to hide it.
No, you know exactly what it is when you see it.
So,
he's going to sit in the
So
lotus
I think
position.
he's the best out of all of them because at least he's not like trying to be sanctimonious about it.
He's the most dangerous. He's the most dangerous. Okay.
Sting is the most dangerous.
Sting is the most dangerous
of the rock star douchebags.
He will fucking sit there in the lotus position, and your wife will climb up upon his lingam. Okay? In the lotus position. Won't even thrust. Nope.
He doesn't need to.
Doesn't need thrust. Just with fucking pure spiritual power, he just busts a nut.
It's amazing, really, when you think about it.
Yeah. It's a secret weapon.
It's all that yoga and shit that he does.
Yeah. Yoga yogurt.
Ew.
Yeah.
Thanks for that image.
Yeah, yoga.
He's like, you're
We're going
welcome.
to make a whole video about it. We're going to reenact that right over there, Jenny. It's going to sit in a lotus position.
Oh my god, how fucking funny would that be?
I'd be dressed up like Sting.
Oh my god, let's do it. God, that would be so funny.
Nobody would understand it.
Oh my god, that'd be so funny.
We'll have you with 4 arms like Kali and shit.
That would be hilarious. You're no fun. That would be hilarious.
You're gonna have to do some of those Indian dances and shit.
Okay.
All right. Have you blue and everything, paint you blue like Kali, skulls and shit.
I was gonna do that for Halloween one year until I figured out how much it would cost.
And I will be dressed up as Sting.
Sting and Kali.
Yeah.
I mean, admittedly, it's a little. You got to go a little way to get there, but it's like I don't know. I think it would be really funny. I mean, it would be funny to me anyway, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Camp Guy said, "Sting, Nothing Like the Sun" is a great album. It is actually. I used to have it on vinyl. I don't think I have it anymore. But yeah, so the Boomtown Rats did that song, I Don't Like Mondays, which, like I said, even though it did get some radio play here in the United States, enough so that, like, in San Diego, like, San Diego radio stations were like, yeah, we're not playing that, because people here are a little sensitive about it, as you might imagine. But it did get some radio play, like, in some other larger markets in the U.S. It didn't chart here, I don't think, but it was #1 for, like, a month in the U.K. and, like, a bunch of other countries. It was a huge hit over there, too. And, like I said, I heard it over here, like, in the... Probably not in 1979, but I heard it like in the early 80s for sure. But yeah, that's what I didn't know back then, that it was based on what it was based on, though. I only found that out like probably in the mid 80s, who it was talking about. But I don't know what he was talking about, like, because in the lyrics he talking about a silicone chip inside her head. Like, like I said, I guess they were trying to, like, imply that maybe she was, like, a Manchurian candidate or something, but it wasn't that. I mean, she did have, you know, a head injury, and she had epilepsy and stuff, but I don't think there was anything. There wasn't any, like, weird MK Ultra shit or anything like that. So, as I said, Brenda was actually, like, happy that he had written that song because it made her famous. Because, like I said, she just wanted attention. So I think she was happy about anything that made her famous. Note that she wouldn't, you know, when she was holed up in the house, like, after the shooting, she wouldn't come out until she was sure that TV cameras were there. And then she made sure that she was going to get on TV, like, with handcuffs on. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, so I've heard. So it was very important to her that she came across like that. So yeah, I guess we're gonna wrap this up because we've been on for more than 2 hours, and I have to go to bed soon. Yeah, because you know how it is, having to get up early and all that other kind of shit. Like I have to do.
Yeah, Oscar and Misky were like, "You guys are gonna go camp to camp with us tonight." I said, "Man, she's gonna go to sleep, man."
Well, we talked to Misty a little bit last night over FaceTime.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was getting to be
listening now.
It was getting to be 10 o'clock, and I was like, oh man, I was like dozing off, you know what I mean? Because, well, you know, it's like, I feel bad, but it's like, I know that 10 o'clock is very early, and I feel like an old person, but I am
and they're in another time zone, too.
And they're in another time zone, too. Yeah. Like, we're in Eastern Standard, and they're, like, in Texas, so I'm just kind of like...
it's earlier for them.
You know, I know it's like an old lady thing to go to bed at 10, but I'm like,
she
dude,
gets up at 4:30.
I get up at like 4:30 or 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I have to be at work in Daytona like an hour away, like at 7:30.
Yeah.
So I have to get up really early. Yeah. I leave the house at like 6:15.
So fucking weekdays she works all fucking day, and then she works all night when she comes home on the weekdays.
Yeah, actually, when I got home,
she does all the other projects.
When I got home today. Yep. Like, you know, you had made me he left me a salad, like, on my desk, like, when I came home, like, a nice big salad with turkey on it and everything, and I was like, awesome. So, like, I ate that, and then I had 2 graphic design jobs to do.
Yeah.
Like, thankfully, they were just, like, small ones, so I got them done, like, pretty quick. And then I had to go through my notes for the show again and make sure that everything that I wanted to be in there was in there, and, like... you know, set up everything for that. So
Zach said something about Sting. What he said?
Oh shit, Sting. I never realized how creepy the lyrics to Every Breath You Take are.
Oh, yeah.
And after I heard it. Yeah, well, see, that's the thing. And Sting himself even said that. I mean, he acknowledged, he's like, I wrote that about a fucking stalker. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not a normal dude.
But he's like, I saw him on an interview like a long time. This was a long time ago. But he said, you know, he's like, I have people come up to me and go, I got married to that song. And he's like...
You fucking
okay.
He said that song got so popular and was so misunderstood that he felt guilty. I fuck with Sting. I have a lot of respect for Sting.
We love the Police. We're not saying I listen to the Police in the car all the time.
Yeah, he's real talented. He's extremely witty. But because Every Breath You Take got so popular, he felt guilty about it because people fucking thought that was a healthy,
like a love song,
and he's like, no. So when he went solo, he wrote a response to that called "Set Them Free."
Yeah, if you love somebody, set them free.
And he says, this is what I really believe.
Yeah.
And you know, he's which, you know, it's a good lesson, that song, but you got to understand, you know, he's also kind of like a polyamorous type dude. When you're Sting, you're going to be a woman collector probably, because why wouldn't you? You can get one beautiful woman, and you can get a second one and a third one. Why not? I kind of think he was
collect them all.
Collect them all. Collect them all, and you're rich enough to take care of them all. They're
just
all
like
happy.
Pokemon.
Send them all out shopping together. Fucking yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
That's so funny though that anybody would think that Every Breath You Take was like a romantic song.
No, that motherfucker.
I was like,
nuts.
that's a stalker song.
Yeah.
And he wrote it as a stalker song.
Yeah, at the time.
At the time, yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't meant to be a healthy example.
No. He's like, he was writing it as like
ultra
a creepy...
control. It was a maximum control motherfucker.
Yeah, because you don't want somebody that's like fucking crawling up your ass 24/7.
Yeah,
Holy
just
shit.
Thinking about you no matter where you are, and every breath you take, every step you there, I'll be right there with you. No.
I'm like, no thanks.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah. So listen to fucking off the Dream of the Blue Turtles album, fucking. If you love someone, set them free.
Yeah, I think it's called If You Love Somebody, Set Them Free.
Yeah.
Like there's parentheses in there somewhere.
Yeah.
They play it at the club every now and then.
It's a good song.
Well, it's weird because when you talk about every breath you take and that being like a toxic relationship and people like really misinterpreting that, I kind of feel like the same thing happened. I'm going to say the same thing happened with the fucking Twilight books and the 50 Shades of Grey books. So many women got into those books and, oh, it's so romantic and stuff. I'm like, that's not romantic. That's fucked up. I was like, those are toxic relationships that they are talking about. And the fact that, like, people are reading those, like, thinking that that's good or that's something to, like, aspire to, I'm like, no, that's going to be a bad time for everyone involved. I'm like, those are horrible, controlling relationships, and you really... it's just red flag city is going on in that. And it's the same thing with every breath you take. And it's just kind of alarming that, like, people... kind of aspire to those kind of relationships. Like, I don't want some like dude that like climbs in my window and is like watching me sleep.
Yeah.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
That's not romantic. That's fucking creepy. Yeah. A lot of stuff, that's why I don't like rom-coms, because a lot of stuff that happens in rom-coms is straight up fucking creepy. I'm like, if that, like, that's stalker behavior. I'm like, they would report people to the cops for that nowadays. Yeah. Some of the shit that they do in rom-coms. It's like, oh, it's so romantic. I'm like, no, it's really not. It's fucking creepy. Trey says, hey guys, YouTube is having issues for me tonight. The audio's out of sync no matter what I play. So I'll have to listen to this one later. Y'all be cool over, and see you soon. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's fine. Like, because
the show's over.
Yeah, we've already been on for 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's time to shut it
And like
down
I said, I gotta clean up and go to bed because it's almost 10 o'clock. Almost my bedtime.
Yeah.
Us old ladies gotta go to bed.
The old ladies gotta go to bed.
The old ladies gotta go to bed. But anyway, I think this turned out a good show. This was, like I said, this was an interesting topic. I've always been kind of fascinated by this girl. Just because it's so unusual and I still don't know what the fuck. I mean, I kind of know what her deal is, but geez. Yeah, Trey said I tried to watch several times. Yeah, it must be, I guess it's YouTube all over because our audio is in sync here, but I have that problem with YouTube sometimes too, but not that often. All right, so we're going to wrap it up for this Wednesday evening. Thank you very much, Mrs. Evans Artie Party. Thanks for the show, she says. Thank you very much for the super chat. So thanks you guys for dropping by this evening. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. We will be back on Friday night for our infamous Sidetrack show, where we'll be talking about God knows what. You know how we do. Having drinks and whatnot. So hopefully you can join us for that. So we'll see you guys again on Friday night. Good night.